Chapter 4074. There's no need to deny it. In fact, you've contributed a lot to the entire Mu family all these years. You've taken care of the Mu family from top to bottom, and the entire Mu family's affairs are in your hands. How could you not know the movements of the two girls? Those two girls who wanted to climb into your bed were nominally sent by concubine Sure. But in fact you were the one who added fuel to the fire and watched coldly from the sidelines. You can't get away with all this. But in the end, after the incident, the one who was punished was concubine Sure, who took the blame for you. Sure Huixin is really miserable. Arbor said coldly. From the beginning to the end, she was a chess piece in your hands. She played wherever you wanted her to play. In the end, she was killed by your vicious rotting talisman from a distance. Mu Jingfeng, this fool, even accused me of killing her. How could he know that there should be a talisman hall in Tianyun? I've dealt with a lot of people in your hall. For example, that Black Cat Master. He's from your subordinate Clear Sky sect. In fact, he should be from Tianyun's talisman hall. Mu Qingya looked at Arbor with a smile in her eyes. For a long time, she just looked at her with a smile on her lips. Her eyes were calm, as if at this moment, she hadn't revealed the little girl's hidden identity. Kaidai Pavilion, Zhenhua Workshop, and Despondent Pavilion are all properties left to me by my mother. Is it wrong for me to take them back? Arbor looked at Mu Qingya. That's my mother's dowry. It's my mother's things. It's mine. Mu Qingya's smiling eyes gradually turned cold, and her lips curled into a faint sneer. You were dissatisfied, but you had no choice but to give the property to me. So you sent people to Kaidai Pavilion and set fire to people. You secretly forged my handwriting and tricked Caixio into taking the poison letter to Kaidai Pavilion. Even if the fire didn't kill people, the poison would have ruined Kaidai Pavilion's reputation and made my reputation notorious. But I suddenly came back from the academy. I took control of the situation and made your scheme fail again. You actually hate me for messing up all your plans. Although I came back in time to deal with the Kaidai Pavilion matter, Caixio was injured. The 8 members of the Zhang clan were instigated by you to cause trouble. Although they are detestable, they don't deserve to die. 8 lives were lost just like that in the prison. I admit that you won that time. You're really amazing. The little crown princess walked towards her and stood 3 steps away from her. She looked at her indifferently. I have suspected you 3 times. All 3 times, nothing happened. Can you tell me the truth now? I'm really curious. Arbor looked at her and said, I don't know what I've done to offend you that you can send people after me again and again. Time and time again, you want me to feel like I'm in hell, living a miserable life. In this life, you have no hope of fulfilling your wish. Because you have already fulfilled it in your previous life. Mu Qingya tilted her head slightly, and her cold eyes became colder and colder. Suddenly, her fingers twitched, and she lightly pushed aside the knife against her neck. She then gave Qiao Mu an extremely faint smile. Do you want to know? You'll never know in this life, Mu Qingya said coldly. Protect the hall master, Granny Qiu shouted. Chapter 4075. The disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect rushed toward Arbor and tried their best to protect Mu Qingya and the others as they retreated. From the looks of it, they probably didn't care about anything else and wanted to retreat immediately. Song Lu stood in place in shock, as if she hadn't recovered from the shock of, Madam is the leader of the Heavenly Fate sect, and was pushed to the ground. Before she could stand up, she was stepped on by the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect. Holding her broken arm, she cried out in pain. The disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect carried the pale-faced Mrs. Hua, Mu Rochin, and the others and retreated as they fought. Countless rays of spiritual qi of various colors collided in the air, making buzzing sounds. Arbor looked coldly at the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect who were holding other people's families hostage. With a wave of his hand, countless arrows flew down from the roof. The arrows were accurate and powerful. Each arrow pierced through the neck of a disciple of the Heavenly Fate sect, knocking them to the ground and killing them instantly. Mu Qingya said coldly, use them as shields. Mrs. Hua was horrified to find that she had been lifted up in the air, blocking the heads of Mu Qingya and the others. If there were arrows flying down from the sky, they would definitely turn her into a hornet's nest. Mother! Mother! The young masters of the fifth branch were so anxious that they jumped up and raised their swords to charge forward, but they were stopped by the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect in the front row. Crown Princess, Mu Qingya said coldly. Mu Qingya said coldly, "You don't care about the lives of 20 to 30 women here? Let us leave this place in exchange for these people's lives." Mu Qingya said calmly and elegantly. She didn't have the feeling that she was forced into a desperate situation and had no way out. Even at this very moment, her identity had already been exposed and she was seen clearly from head to toe. She still acted like an elegant and dignified madam. She was calm, and her eyes were cold and indifferent. She didn't give off the slightest feeling of being seen through. She was so calm that Emolien and the others couldn't help but look at her in a new light. For an ordinary woman to become the leader of the Heavenly Fate sect, it was definitely not due to luck. She was capable. In fact, except for the fact that this woman had no cultivation, her mind, judgment, and even vision were very shrewd and unique, far better than those women raised in boudoirs. "Let them go," Arbor said coldly. Mu Qingya sneered. "Do you think I'm a fool? Now that I've released her, I'll let you do whatever you want without any cover. You don't have a choice." The young Crown Prince Consort's icy voice weighed down on everyone present, causing their hearts to sink. "If I can't live, then why should I listen to you?" Mu Qingya sneered and pressed the dagger in her hand against Madame Wu's neck. "All of you back off. Retreat to the middle court." Arbor's voice to the Heavenly Fate sect, to the heavens to her to the ground twos to head to the Heavenly Fate sect. "Madam, sex to kill, sex to kills, I've said it before. Today all of you will die here." Arbor interrupted sex words indifferently and said word by word, "No one can leave unscathed after disturbing my mother's sleep." Mu Qingya, who had been as calm as ever, finally cracked her expression. "Are you really so ruthless and decisive? You don't care about their lives at all?" Chapter 4076. Arbor raised her eyebrows and sneered. "You think they can keep their lives after you take them away? Are you naive, or do you think I'm naive?" Xiao Mu's small hand that she had raised clenched slightly. "The people that you have captured will either become targets for you to blackmail the Mu clan with in the future or be modified for your own use. Are you stupid, or do you think I don't know what you're planning?" Arbor put down her little hand and said sternly, "Shoot. Everyone from the Heavenly Fate realm will die here today. Don't leave a single one alive." Mu Qingya's eyes narrowed, and anger finally appeared in her cold eyes. "Protect the Hall Master and retreat." Nanny Chio's roar shook the sky. She used a silver hook to deflect the arrows that were flying toward her. She was about to grab a girl from the Mu family and place her in front of Mu Qingya. Just as she was about to grab a girl from the Mu family, a shrill cry came from the sky. Chio Mama immediately felt a tearing pain in her arm. She looked down and saw that Qing Luan had torn her hand apart with a claw and directly took the miss of the Mu family, who she was pulling, away from the battle. At the same time, 3 phoenixes flew out of the sky. Yes, there were 3 phoenixes. Everyone looked up with a dumbfounded expression. A red, a purple, and a black bird flapped their wings rapidly and swooped down from the sky, scattering the crowd of heavenly Kismet cultivators who had gathered together. Madame Hua, Mu Rochin, and the others were caught by the claws of 2 phoenixes. With a rip, a small piece of their sleeve was torn and they were pulled away from the others. Mu Qingya's eyes instantly darkened, and she angrily rebuked, "Don't panic. Don't mess up the formation and hold on tight. Screech." In the blink of an eye, the blazing blood phoenix flapped its wings and spat out a line of fire towards the feet of the Heavenly Fate disciples. Nanny Chio grabbed Mu Qingya's arm. Ignoring the fact that her hand was still bleeding, she pulled Mu Qingya 2 steps back and kicked away Song Lu, who was standing in front of her. Then she quickly retreated. "Nanny Chio, madam." "Madam!" Song Lu's face was full of fear. He struggled to get up from the ground and limped forward 2 steps. Suddenly, an arrow pierced through his heart. With a face full of pain and despair, he stretched out his hand in the direction of the two people leaving and fell heavily to the ground. She probably never thought that she would die like this. Her eyes were wide open, revealing a hint of unwillingness. Nanny Chiu didn't even have time to look at Song Lu. She just shouted, "Protect the hall master and retreat." Beside her, Thorny Rose also recovered from her shock. She swept a glance at Mu Qingya and indifferently curled her lips. She grabbed Mu Jingfeng, who was still in a daze, and giggled. "What, are you dumbfounded? Why aren't you leaving? Are you waiting for them to counterattack?" Now she could see that the little girl was really capable. No matter if it was the divine bird Qing Wan or the 3 divine phoenix beasts, it was already an amazing thing for an ordinary cultivator to have one of them, let alone this girl actually had 4 of them. Not any random Xiozha could contend against him. Without absolute strength and wealth, Tisk, wanting to kill this little girl was probably a fool's dream. Chapter 4077. Not to mention Mu Qingya, who didn't have any cultivation. Even if the hall masters of other halls were here, they would definitely suffer in the hands of this little girl. So a wise man submits to circumstances. It was best to leave quickly and avoid suffering such a great loss. Tao Wei quickly retreated with her people. Although the ordinary heavenly fate disciples were all quite strong, how could they be a match for the well-trained Hades court guards? After shooting a round of arrows from the tall building, they immediately jumped down from the roof in perfect coordination and directly engaged in a purge of the heavenly fate disciples. The 4 divine beasts, Qing Wan, Huofeng, and the other 3 divine beasts, were even faster in their rescue operation. In a matter of minutes, they rescued more than 20 female members of the Mu clan who were originally held captive by the heavenly fate disciples. After Mu Rakan was rescued, her snow-white little face was as pale as a sheet of paper. While Mu Yuanyuan and Mu Lixiang were fighting the enemies, they quickly moved to her side and held her up. They asked with concern, "Rakan, how are you?" I'm fine." Although Mu Rochin and 5th Madam were a little frightened, their complexions were a little unsightly, and their bodies were more or less injured. Compared to the scene they had imagined in their hearts that they would die here today, these small injuries were nothing. "You, go kill the enemies. Don't worry about us," Mu Rakan hurriedly said. They really had to thank the little crown princess for today's matter. Although the little crown princess looked cold and emotionless on the surface, she had already ordered Qing Wan and Huofeng to rescue them when she gave the order to shoot the arrows. The 2 sides fought fiercely. The heavenly fate disciples fell one by one under the counterattacks of the Mu clan disciples and the Hades court guards. Nanny Chiu couldn't care too much at this time. Under the protection of a group of people, she protected Mu Qingya and retreated toward the back mountain gate of the Mu clan. "Nanny Chiu." Mu Qingya held her blood-stained arm and her eyes moved slightly. "I'm fine, madam." Nanny Chiu's face was cold as she said in a deep voice, "These small injuries won't take this old servant's life. Let this old servant escort madam out of here first. If there's anything, let's talk outside." Mu Qingya turned her head and looked out of the crowd. With this glance, she accurately caught the cold gaze of the little crown princess. Between the 2 of them were countless Mu clan and heavenly fate sect disciples who were fighting with all their might. Both sides were fighting very fiercely. However, the young crown prince consort wasn't affected by all this commotion. She stood outside the crowd, her eyes sparkling like snow. Staring at her, Mu Qingya fell into a trance for a moment, as if the little girl was rarely emotional. Just like now, he was coldly looking at you without saying a word. His eyes were incomparably focused. It made one's hair stand on end, and it climbed up from the bottom of their hearts. "You can't escape." Mu Qingya read these words from her cold eyes. The little girl raised her left hand, and a longbow made of ice and snow suddenly fell into her small hand. His eyes were still fixed on Mu Qingya. Drawing the bow and pulling the arrow only took a breath. The profound ice arrow whizzed through the night sky and flew against the wind, suddenly shooting toward Mu Qingya. "Go!" Mu Qingya was greatly shocked. She grabbed Nanny Chiu's hand and shouted, "Madam, get out of the way!" Nanny Chiu's old face suddenly flushed red. Chapter 4078. Whoosh! The sound of the arrow piercing through the air broke through the thick night. This arrow seemed to have pierced through the crescent moon in the sky, carrying with it a desolate and austere intent. With a trace of terrifying fury, it shot in front of Mu Qingya like a clap of thunder. There was nowhere left to hide. Granny Chiu pushed Mu Qingya away, her face ashen. She gathered all of her divine power into her arm as fast as she could. A ray of red light shot out from her palm. Flames danced, and her divine power was released, bringing with it a brilliant light in the dark night. Everyone saw the red light form an oval-shaped protective shield, which rushed towards the little girl's arrow. The enchanting red light and the bright silver light collided in a matter of minutes. The little girl's arrow scattered silver-white snowflakes in the air. It pierced through the opponent's protective shield at an extremely fast speed, and it continued to advance without any intention of stopping. All of the Mu family disciples couldn't help but hold their breaths. They saw their eldest Miss Arrow instantly break through Granny Chio's oval-shaped protective shield. It didn't seem to be exhausted at all, and it shot through the old woman's chest at a speed comparable to that of light. Pfft! Granny Chio spat out a mouthful of blood. The entire place was in an uproar, accompanied by the thunderous roars of all the youths of the Dark Court guards. Crown Princess! Crown Princess! Crown Princess! Prince Mo smirked, and his gaze landed on Arbor with a smile. The little girl looked at Mu Qingya and the others expressionlessly. She raised her hand slightly and said calmly, "Disciples of the heavenly providence go against the heavens. Everyone has the right to punish them. Everyone has the responsibility to eradicate the heavenly providence. Eradicate the heavenly providence. Madam, let's go. Madam, let's go." Granny Chiu pushed Mu Qingya forcefully. In front of them, Thorny Rose had already quickly opened the teleportation talisman formation and stepped into it. Granny Chiu used her last breath to slap Mu Qingya's back and send her into the formation. Arbor's eyes were cold and merciless. With a flick of her finger, countless attack talismans flew out of her small hand and merged into the light and shadow of the teleportation talisman array. Although the transportation glyph array had quickly brought Thorny Rose, Mu Jingfeng, and Mu Qingya away, everyone could still hear several howls of anguish that varied in intensity. Presumably, the people in the formation were more or less injured. Arbor looked coldly in the direction they left and spat out a word, "Chase." Prince Mo's figure flashed and lifted the dying Nanny Chiu. Without waiting for him to speak, Mama Chiu coldly stared at him. Her neck moved slightly, and her head suddenly drooped down. Mo Lien looked down and saw a smear of black blood dripping from the old woman's mouth. It was obvious that she had taken poison to commit suicide. What a loyal and unruly old servant. Arbor coldly said. Then she took out a soul-summoning talisman and lifted the old woman's soul out without another word. After Nanny Chiu's faint soul was lifted out, she couldn't help but shiver when she saw the cold and lonely little girl in front of her. At this time, she was still a bit confused. Seeing Arbor standing in front of her, she was a bit confused. Was she alive or dead? "I'll let you see what will happen to the madam you wholeheartedly protected," Arbor coldly said. "The person I, Arbor, want to kill won't live for long. You definitely won't be able to protect her." Chapter 4079. The little girl's fingers tightened around Granny Chiu's soul. Her eyes were like thousand-year-old ice, cold and distant. "Don't worry. I won't let her die so easily. After all, she owes me. I'm afraid she won't be able to repay me in this lifetime." The little girl stared coldly at Granny Chiu in her hand and said coldly, "In this lifetime, I want her to beg for death." At this moment, the heavenly fate sect's disciples had all been eliminated. Only the Mu family's disciples and the Nether Court guards were left. Everyone was silent. Only the little girl's cold and resolute voice sounded in their ears. It was bone-chilling and indifferent. The pitch-black flames rose behind them and swept away the corpses of the heavenly fate sect's disciples. Even the souls of the heavenly fate sect's disciples were burned clean. Not even their bones were left. Arbor shot out several teleportation talisman arrays. Holding Mo Lien's hand, He led the group of nether court guards and disappeared in front of everyone. The heaven-level teleportation talisman array could teleport up to 500 people at a time. The distance was up to 500 kilometers. One of the Mu family's disciples gritted his teeth and rushed into the teleportation talisman array with his sword. Soon after, 2, 3, 100, 300, 500 Mu family disciples followed in batches and ran over. Mu Xingqian's eyes flickered. He looked back and exchanged glances with the old master. Then he quickly followed. Although the old master was also in a sorry state and covered in blood, there was an indescribable joy in his expression. He watched as the Mu family's juniors rushed into the talisman array without fear of death. The old master suddenly burst into laughter. The great elder, the second elder, and the others beside him also laughed. Although each of them had more or less wounds on their bodies, they were barely holding on at this time. Their bodies were extremely exhausted. However, they had never felt so happy before. There was no other reason. After this battle, the entire Mu family seemed to have been twisted into a rope. Their cohesiveness had reached an unprecedented level that had never been seen before. Whether it was the old master or the elders, they were all very clear. It was the little girl who brought these people together again. It was the little crown princess who reignited the fighting spirit of the Mu family. It reignited the courage and bravery in their bones. Just now, they hadn't said a word, but had followed the figure of the little crown princess as she left. They were all in a sorry state, so tired that they might not even be able to lift their swords. However, the old master and the elders had never felt that the Mu family's juniors were extremely pleasing to the eye like today. Their backs were straight, and their eyes were unwavering. They looked like the descendants of the Mu family. The second elder's smile pulled at the wound at the corner of his mouth. He grimaced in pain and sighed, "I finally understand why Ancestor Zhang must rely on this little girl to be the patriarch." The ancestor was indeed the ancestor. His eyes were indeed sharp and experienced. This was because he had long seen that the Mu family really had to let the young lady be the person in charge in order to restore its former glory and splendor. Only eldest Miss could bear such a heavy responsibility and shoulder the faith and hope of the entire family. At this point, it could be said that the entire Mu family was wholeheartedly convinced by the little stoic. The little stoic naturally didn't know about this change. When she, her husband, and Xingqian led the underworld court guards out of the transportation talisman array, they immediately turned around and gazed coldly behind them. "They're here." The little stoic's lips curled into a sneer. Chapter 4080. Did they think they could slip away from a heaven-grade great talisman master with a transportation talisman formation? Too naive. If it were her in the past, perhaps she really wouldn't have been able to do anything to them. But now, Lord Jojo was already a heaven-grade great talisman master. He knew the flow of talisman power, the control of talisman power, and the depth of talisman power like the back of his hand. She knew what talisman the other party used, how much talisman power they had, the approximate location of the transportation and the distance. After calculating the distance and space, he led all the dark court guards to wait for Mu Qingya and the others at the outskirts. Sure enough, with a flash of light, Thorny Rose was the first to fall out of the transportation talisman formation, spitting out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that the wave of attack talismans from earlier had caused a series of commotion in the narrow transportation space after falling into the formation, causing everyone to be heavily injured. Arbor stood there with cold eyes and looked at Mu Qingya from a distance. Mu Qingya was sent into the formation by Nanny Chio's palm strike and was also shaken by the attack talismans. She was obviously injured. But the problem was, her complexion actually looked better than Thorny Rose's. Arbor looked her up and down a few times before nodding and saying, "As expected of Soaring Heavens Hall's Hall Master. Even though you don't have cultivation, you still have a lot of defensive talismans and defensive spirit artifacts on you." Mu Qingya covered a bloody wound on her arm and calmly looked up at Arbor. She sighed softly and said, "Jojo, you are indeed powerful." Arbor nodded again. "If I wasn't powerful, I would have been killed by the Clear Sky Sect people you sent on Seekong planet." I really didn't expect that a woman like you could make Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gong Pengcheng, so devoted to you. Arbor looked her up and down curiously. You are a woman without cultivation. What right do you have to do this? I am also very curious. It's good for people to be curious. Mu Qingya smiled faintly. Her expression was distant. But a person's curiosity may not always be satisfied by others. Arbor sneered. When Rowan has been scheming against me and my family since the beginning. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. After that, Priest Dayu, Fan Shoha, Fan Gu, the three dwarf brothers, let me think, and Old Monkey Brother 2, 10 FA from the Clear Sky sect, there are too many. Arbor sighed. Look, how many people did you send to deal with me, and what did you get in the end? Nothing. You can't deal with me at all. At least in her life, she had never suffered a big loss in the hands of Mu Qingya. Could this be attributed to the misery of his previous life? So that she could gain experience in dealing with enemies? Arbor raised his eyebrows in self-mockery. His eyes flickered, and there was a hint of loneliness in them. But there aren't so many wise in this world. Mu Qingya sighed. Just like you. I also want to know why you seem to be blessed by God. You seem to be able to see through my intentions, my actions, and the people I send every time. They seem to be useless to you. Arbor was taken aback. A faint, cold, and desolate smile slowly blossomed on his lips. What you said makes some sense. Who doesn't have a little bit of secret on them? Mu Qingya. Although you have no cultivation, you have a special ability, right? I'm so sleepy that I want to smash my computer. Chapter 4081. Mu Qingya smiled faintly at the little girl and said faintly, I'm really curious about you now. Look at you. You're just a little girl. How can you be so capable? You're indeed not an ordinary person. Mu Qingya smiled and raised her hand to tidy up her slightly messy hair. When you returned to the Mu family, I couldn't make you disappear from the family immediately. From then on I lost. At that time, you asked me for the management rights of the Kaidai Pavilion, the Despondent Pavilion, and the Precious Painting Workshop. Of course, you didn't do anything wrong. These were originally your mother's businesses. But was I wrong? All these years, I've been taking care of those shops. I made them prosper, and that's why they're where they are today. You're great. The moment you came back, you stretched out your hand and completely overruled all my efforts over the years. Tell me, how annoying are you, child? Mu Qingya sighed softly and slowly pushed away the two heavenly fate disciples who were protecting her. Although I'm unwilling, I can only give them away. I originally thought that there would be a process for you to take over these businesses, and it would be chaotic for a while. But I didn't expect that you would really make me look at you in a different light. You've done well. You've managed the businesses left behind by your mother in an orderly manner. Because of the existence of the holy rice and the beautifying pill, they're even more popular than when I was managing them before. You cultivators are so unscrupulous. Mu Qingya let out a long sigh, a trace of helplessness appearing between her brows. No matter how hard an ordinary person tries to catch up, no matter how hard they work, you only need to use a little trick to leave us far behind, and we'll never see the end of it. I'm just wondering if you're really that lucky. If I use a little trick, will you be unlucky? Mu Qingya suddenly laughed. Her laughter was gentle and sweet, and a faint light flowed in the bottom of her eyes. It's a pity that Nanny Zhang found a group of idiots and failed to bring you down. I have to send Nanny Chiu to deal with the aftermath personally. When the Crown Princess took over the Kaidai veranda, not only did she manage the business well, she even made the reputation of the Kaidai veranda and the Precious Painting Workshop soar in just a few days. What does that mean? Mu Qingya laughed at herself. It means that you're far more capable than me. To think that I boasted about being smart all my life, but I didn't expect that in the end, I couldn't even defeat a little girl. Are you really someone from this era? Mu Qingya's gaze was focused as she stared at Xiao Mu. She took a step forward, her long plain dress swaying slightly in the wind. Could it be that I made a mistake from the start? Mu Qingya looked deeply at the young lady in front of her. Her words were long and leisurely, with a hint of softness at the end. Crown Princess, where did you come from? Me. The little Crown Princess looked at her with an indifferent expression. Her gaze was extremely cold, as if she was looking at a cold corpse. I'm a malicious spirit that climbed up from a mountain of corpses, a sea of blood, and the depths of hell. I'm here specifically to take your life. Even though Mu Qingya was bold and meticulous, her heart still trembled in fright at the young Crown Prince Consort's unperturbed and cold expression. Ha! Mu Qingya suddenly laughed out loud. Chapter 4082. Pursing her red lips, Mu Qingya looked at Arbor and nodded with a smile. She stretched out a slender finger and pointed in Arbor's direction. Crown Princess, you're definitely the most interesting person I've ever seen in my life. You're also very interesting, Arbor said coldly. Your special ability is in your eyes, right? The little Crown Princess stretched out her finger and drew a curve in front of her eyes. Your eyes can monitor me from afar, right? Isn't that right? Why do you say that, Crown Princess? That day, I put the magic eye on you. You knew that I was already suspecting you, Arbor said indifferently. You deliberately put on a show to confuse me. It was that show where you pretended to worship my mother in the secret chamber and cursed the dragon to keep his promise. It made me feel that you should be standing by my side. Mu Qingya smiled but didn't say anything. The scene of that day flashed through his mind. When she activated her special ability and found that the little girl had thrown a magic eye on her to monitor her, she already had a plan in mind. At that time, she patted Nanny Chio's hand and drew the word, memorial, on her palm. Nanny Chio had worked with her for many years, and they had worked together many times in the sacrificial scene for Long Chun. Naturally, she could understand what she meant immediately. Thus, Nanny Chio immediately cooperated with her and put on another sacrificial scene. They worked well together and truly bewitched the little Crown Princess. When they went out, the maid who splashed the water had been arranged early in the morning. The magic eye was naturally useless when it got wet. After changing out of the wet clothes and burning them, they could safely survive this crisis. Mu Qingya was very attentive. After this incident, she became more respectful and obedient to the little Crown Princess. One couldn't find any fault with her at all. You're indeed very capable, very capable. Xiao Mu nodded dryly. But no matter how perfect a person is, they will still reveal their flaws in the end. No one is perfect, Arbor glanced at her and said, your attitude towards Mu Rochuan makes me very puzzled. If she could be so cruel to her own daughter, how could she be so attentive to the daughter of her good sister? You actually hate my mother, don't you? I didn't. You do. Arbor interrupted her coldly. My mother's talent is outstanding and her status is noble. You don't have these. Ah. Mu Qingya couldn't help but sneer. Do you think I'm such a shallow person? Would you hate her for a noble status and an illusory talent? Yes. The young Crown Prince Consort nodded in full agreement. Mu Qingya's face instantly became twisted and ferocious. Everyone behind him was speechless. If they were Mu Qingya, they would probably be angered to death by the little Crown Princess's indifferent attitude. Unfortunately, these are all things you don't have. You should try very hard to get them, but in this lifetime it's probably impossible. Shut up. Mu Qingya clenched her fists and yelled at him. What do you know? Don't judge others rashly with a self-righteous tone. You did so much for your mother, and it's not wrong. But am I wrong? What's wrong with me? We're just in different positions. Actually, we're not wrong. Chapter 4083. Different standpoints? Different standpoints. Arbor snickered. I, Arbor, will not be like a mad dog that bites others for generations to come just because we have different standpoints. Ask yourself honestly. From Xikong Planet to Shuntian Prefecture and then to the Divine Province. How many times have you dealt with me along the way? You instigated Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord, Gung Pengcheng, to deal with me when I was 7 years old on Xikong Planet in the lower star domain. You arranged for Wen Rowan to interfere with my life and my family's lives with the intention of controlling my life and wanting me to live a life worse than death? All of these schemes suddenly collapsed after I met Emolien and joined the Holy Water sect. You're done for. Xiao Mu held a black ferrule horizontally in her hand as she stared coldly at Muqingya. The countless pursuits and schemes that followed were merely because you wanted to make a comeback. You completely failed. You succeeded in your previous life. Arbor coldly looked at her. You can no longer control my life. You made me extremely miserable in my previous life. How I want to live and how I want to walk is entirely up to me to control my own future. How much blood and tears have I paid for this? In her previous life, she didn't even know that she was originally a daughter of the Mu family. She didn't know that this world was so vast. She also didn't know that her biological father's second wife used so many disgusting and despicable methods to deal with her, to prevent her from regaining her original identity and to prevent her from setting foot on the fertile land of the 3 provinces continents. Right now, she even suspected that this Muqingya was a psychopath with a twisted mind. Otherwise, how could she be so at ease and use so many schemes against a little girl who was only 7 years old? Just what kind of enmity and grievance did she have to hate her own mother, Long Chuyun, so much? You will never know. For a person who is used to freedom, equality, and openness, what kind of life is the most torturous? You won, Arbor. Muqingya heaved a sigh of relief. The winner takes all. I, Muqingya, have nothing to say. I'm just curious. You're a ghost from hell. How far can you go in this life? The icy snow mountain is bone-chilling. In the dim yellow sea of fire, the raging flames burn the heart. Crown Princess, isn't the future scary? I will accompany her no matter how far she goes. You don't have to worry. Emolien replied coldly. She moved slightly to Arbor's side and reached out to hold her bone-chilling hand. A sea of fire and a snow mountain, what is there to fear? If we work together, all difficulties will be easily solved. The little Crown Princess raised her head and looked into his smiling eyes. Her heart suddenly softened. Muqingya suddenly laughed heartily. She looked gently at Arbor and said, "Child, you're much luckier than your mother. I know you hate me and want me to die right now. But I still have a lot of things to do. At least, I won't die today." Muqingya pursed her lips and smiled confidently. There are only a handful of heaven-level great talisman masters in the 3 provinces. You're really impressive. Muqingya sighed softly. Chapter 4084. Child, what do you think of this world? Muqingya raised her hands and pointed at the boundless sky, her gaze softly watching Arbor. Do you think that talent is predestined and that no one can change it? Are people born into noble families truly rich and powerful, and are favored by the heavens and earth? No. Muqingya looked at them firmly. Everything is possible in this world. Everything can be changed. This is the meaning of the heavenly fortune's existence. Since the heavenly Tao can't be fair, just, and free, then let us, the heavenly fortune, create these. We are ordinary people, but we weren't ordinary from birth. Muqingya faintly stared at the little Crown Princess and resolutely said, "What we don't have, we can create with our own hands. We can strive for it." Who said that we must be determined to struggle for survival at the lowest level of society our entire lives? What's there to be afraid of if we don't have status? We can create the heavenly fortune and let it rule this entire world. What's there to be afraid of if we don't have talent? We can create talent. Let ourselves become people above others. We don't need to be oppressed by the unfairness of this world anymore. The heavenly fortune is the hope of all of us ordinary and poor people. No matter how you noble families suppress it, how you exterminate it, what should rise will always rise. What should succeed will definitely succeed in the end. Chila Chila. After Muqingya finished speaking, she suddenly discovered that she, Thornwei, and Mu Jingfeng had constructed confinement talisman arrays around them. At this time, talisman power was slightly flowing, and if one's fingers accidentally touched it, they would be bounced back by a vast and mighty force, making chi-chi sounds. Arbor raised her eyebrows. She was really becoming more and more curious about this Muqingya now. In this kind of situation, Mu Qingya actually expressed her opinion at length, looking as if she had a card up her sleeve that she could definitely escape. What did she rely on? Was it years of planning and strategizing? Or was it her hot-bloodedness at this moment? Arbor clenched the ferrule in her hand, her cold eyes locking onto Mu Qingya. I've heard enough of your nonsense. Now, are you ready? Are you ready to die? Mu Qingya. Arbor leaped into the air with a whoosh, and a fierce gust of wind blew her clothes and hair up. Mu Qingya's expression remained unchanged, but beside her, Thorny Rose and Mu Jingfeng's pupils could not help but shrink. Hall Master. Thorny Rose turned to look at Mu Qingya, cold sweat dripping down her forehead. Right now, they were surrounded by hundreds of underworld court guards and hundreds of Mu family disciples. With the young crown princess and His Highness the Crown Prince blocking the way in front and so many soldiers blocking the way behind, even if he used the transportation glyph formation again, he might not be able to escape the control of the young crown princess, a heaven-level great glyph master. Arbor, don't be too confident. Mu Qingya suddenly took something out of her sleeve. It was a jade talisman that was emitting a purple light. Suddenly, it broke through the confinement talisman formation around him and shot into the air, emitting a faint purple light. Xiao Mu narrowed her severe eyes as she stared icily at Mu Qingya. In an instant, a cloud-like staircase descended from the clouds, extending all the way to Mu Qingya. Stairway to Heaven Talisman? Arbor's gaze was slightly startled as he muttered. Then, he heard a gust of wind brushing past his ears. A pitch-black tongue of flame extended with the wind. Chapter 4085. In the blink of an eye, it engulfed the bodies of the Heavenly Fate Sect disciples in front of them. After entering the confinement talisman array, it went straight for Mu Qingya, Mu Jingfeng, and Thorny Rose. At the critical moment, Mu Qingya climbed up the stairway to heaven with one hand. Her body was pulled along by the stairway to the extreme, and she dove into the clouds with a whoosh. At the same time, Thorny Rose and Mu Jingfeng also grabbed the stairway to heaven and escaped with Mu Qingya. However, they escaped quickly, and black fire chased after them very quickly. A spark burned up Mu Jingfeng's calf. Even though his figure disappeared into the clouds, everyone could still hear his miserable howl. Mo Lien slightly clenched her fists, and a faint trace of anger flashed through her eyes. She raised her hand, but Arbor raised his hand and pulled it down. Forget it. Don't chase. The little girl sighed. The God-tier talisman can send people into the air. They can be sent 2,000 kilometers away at a time. This is another rare purple talisman. I'm afraid it's more than 2,000 kilometers. Crown Princess, let's just forget about it, Aoyi said with a frown. Of course I can't just let it go like this. As Xiao Mu spoke, a cold glint flitted across her eyes. He turned to Prince Mo and said, "Prepare the troops. We'll wipe out the nearest nest in one fell swoop." The magical thing about the Stairway to Heaven talisman was that she could set a fixed location to return to. Arbor knew very well that the location Mu Qingya set must be the safest place she thought it would be. Without needing Arbor to say anything else, Prince Mo nodded in understanding. He turned back and whispered a few words to Aoyi before letting him lead the troops away in a hurry. Mu Jingfeng rolled down from the Stairway to Heaven talisman. He kept patting his left leg with his hand as he wailed in pain. Thorny Rose coldly glanced at him. She stepped forward and kicked him, exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. "You piece of trash. You just stood up for a moment, and now you're kneeling again. You're simply wasting my improved medicine. Deputy Hall Master, Deputy Hall Master. Give me another bottle of medicinal liquid, Vice Hall Master." Right now, Mu Jingfeng only felt a scorching pain in his calf that spread to his heart. He was in so much pain that he couldn't help but hug his knees. He rolled back and forth on the ground until he reached Thorny Rose. Scram! Thorny Rose kicked her aside and turned to look at Mu Qingya, who was tugging at her clothes. The three of them were standing in front of a dilapidated temple on a hillside in the suburbs. Many disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect had already rushed out from under the ruined temple. When he saw Thorny Rose, he cupped his hands and bowed, "Vice Hall Master." They didn't seem to know Mu Qingya, the hall master of the Soaring Heavens Hall. Their eyes were filled with vigilance and curiosity as they sized up the woman who was flinging her outer robe. "Hall Master Mu, what are you doing?" Thorny Rose speechlessly looked at Mu Qingya. In her heart, she actually looked down on this hall master who had no cultivation at all. But at least on the surface, he could not show the slightest bit of disdain. After all, this was someone who could casually take out a divine rank jade talisman. There was no need to doubt her identity. Mu Qingya turned around and pounced at Thorny Rose. She reached out to tear off her outer robe. Although her expression was calm, her tone was slightly hurried. "Take off your outer robe." And his. "Take it all off. Everyone, prepare to evacuate this stronghold. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and do it." Chapter 4086. When Mu Qingya flung off her outer garment, an inconspicuous little black butterfly emerged from Mu Jingfeng's hair and flew up with a flap of its wings. Thorny Rose's outer garment was hooked to the long skirt inside. If it was torn apart, she would be stripped naked. What would become of her, the great deputy hall master, in broad daylight? Thus, she tried her best to stop Mu Qingya, but her expression instantly turned ugly. "Hall Master Mu, can you tell this subordinate why this is?" "There's no time to explain. Hurry and take off your clothes and see if there's anything dirty on them. Also, hurry and prepare to evacuate this place. Everyone must evacuate. Take all the test subjects with you. You only have half an hour to prepare. You must be quick, quick." A dark and slender figure abruptly appeared beside Mu Qingya. Seeing her slightly flustered appearance, he couldn't help but frown. "For you." Mu Qingya untied a jade pendant from her waist and smashed it to the ground, revealing a silver token inside. She handed it to the demon-masked hall master and said in a deep voice, "You're the person in charge of this stronghold, the Burrowing Hall's hall master Gong, right?" "I'm the Soaring Heavens Hall's hall master, Mu Qingya." 15 minutes later. The demon-masked hall master stared coldly at the flashing flames on the hillside in the distance and didn't speak for a long time. Thorny Rose clutched the coarse clothes she had just changed into, and her face was filled with alarm. "What's going on, Hall Master Mu? How did the Crown Prince's people get here so quickly?" Mu Qingya took a deep breath and turned around to whisper, "Let's go. Abandoning this stronghold is our best choice right now." The demon-masked hall master coldly turned to look at Mu Qingya. "You'll explain this to Master and receive your punishment." "I will." Mu Qingya nodded faintly with a nonchalant look on her face. The demon-masked hall master sized her up and sked lightly before shaking his head. "I didn't know that the Soaring Heavens Hall's hall master, who has always been elusive, was actually the mistress of the Talisman patrician family. Hall Master, you've really hidden yourself well all these years." Mu Qingya's lips curled into a mocking smile. "So what if you hide it well? You'll still be seen through in the end. Hall Masters, are we going to retreat just like that?" Thorny couldn't help but ask. 15 minutes was not enough time for them to prepare much. They only sent out some important information and test subjects. The rest of the things could only be set on fire. There were still quite a few heavenly fate brothers left in the ruined temple to delay the other party. They really did not expect that the little crown princess and her men would arrive so quickly. It was almost as if they had just set the fire in front of them, and the other party had already caught up. They're trying to put out the fire, so the documents haven't been completely burned yet. If they see them, will they? Mu Qingya said coldly, "There's nothing important that can be left there for them to see. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess are both smart people. They should know this. Let's go." Mu Qingya turned around and said. The group of people entered the transportation array and disappeared in a few minutes. Arbor looked at the ruined temple that was crackling with flames. He looked at the dilapidated walls and fences before looking into the distance with his deep black eyes. He passed through the numerous trees and quietly landed on a spot. "Soaring Heavens Hall Master, we have plenty of time in the future." Chapter 4087. Inside the Mu residence's main hall, a chaotic clamor could be heard. Prince Mo and the little crown princess sat side by side at the head of the hall, expressionlessly looking at the people who were forced to kneel in front of them. Their gazes swept past Mu Jingxing, Qiushi, Mu Erkshu, and Mu Ruian. Crown Princess, it was him. It was Second Master who let them in through the front door. We saw it with our own eyes. There's not a word of falsehood. Old Master Mu coldly looked at the Second Branch's group and couldn't help but angrily shout, Jing Xing. You actually did such a thing? Father. Qiushi hurriedly knelt and cried out for being wronged. Father, how can you believe that our Second Branch betrayed the Mu family just based on a few juniors from the side branches adding fuel to the fire? No need to quibble anymore. Ever since you were attacked by the Harpies last time, Father sent people to keep an eye on you. No wonder the incident last time was so strange. That night when your Second Branch was on duty, the Harpies entered the Mu residence as if they were entering a deserted place, Mu Jingyuan coldly said. Third brother, what do you mean by that? Mu Jingxing was furious. Mu Jingyuan didn't waste time with them and directly threw 2 jade talismans in front of them. Take a look. Don't say that a few juniors wronged you. Mu Jingxing's body trembled slightly, and he looked at the jade talismans on the ground with some horror in his eyes. You should have seen the image jade talisman made by Jojo on the day of concubine Shi's death, right? Second uncle, what else do you have to say? Mu Xingxin sat in the seat below Mu Jingyuan and stared coldly at Mu Jingxing's family. Wronged, this is wronged. Mu Jingxing angrily said, this is simply framing us. Framing us? Mu Xingxin sneered. He raised his hand and sucked the image talisman into his hand. A trace of divine power entered it and opened the jade talisman's image. It clearly recorded how Mu Jingxing and Mu Erkshu sneaked to the Mu residence's mountain gate, put away the talisman array at the gate, and opened the gate to welcome Mu Jingfeng's group. Second uncle, you still want to continue quibbling? Just as third uncle said, ever since the incident with the Harpies, we have been keeping an eye on your Second Branch. Now that we have witnesses and material evidence, I really don't understand where you get the face to continue to complain in front of us and even try to absolve yourself of the crime. Mu Jingxing looked at Mu Xingxin's cold expression and his body involuntarily trembled. He suddenly shouted, Can you blame me for this? Are you going to blame me for everything? You forced me to do this, you forced me to do this. Mu Jingxing yelled angrily. His hands couldn't help but point at the sky and draw a picture, his face frosty. I've worked hard for this family for so many years. Can't you see how much I've sacrificed? Mu Jingfeng has fallen from power, yet you guys aren't giving me the position of the family head. Instead, we have to support this silly girl on stage. On what basis? Do you really think that all my years of hard work will go down the drain just because of an order from my ancestor? All of you. You guys are delusional. I think you've gone mad. Elder Dao couldn't help but shout angrily. This is the reason why you betrayed the entire family? First Elder shook his head with a look of disagreement. When did I betray the family? If it wasn't for the family letting me down first, why would I go to this extent? Chapter 4088. Do you think I wanted to do this? I was forced to do this. You forced me. Mu Jingxing shouted angrily. Old master, old master. Madame Qiu's face turned pale. She wanted to go up and stop him, but he flung her away forcefully. Madame Qiu fell to the ground and let out a small cry of surprise. Mother! Mu Ruian was truly scared out of her wits. She was the one who was completely kept in the dark. She had no idea that her father and second brother would do such a thing. Most importantly, it was bad enough that you secretly betrayed the family, but now, you were caught in the act. Wasn't this implicating her for no reason? This seventh Miss Mu was so frightened that she trembled all over. She hurriedly crawled to old Master Mu and cried pitifully, Grandpa, Grandpa, this has nothing to do with me. I didn't know. I didn't know that father and brother would do such a thing. Great. Old Master Mu had yet to punish them, and the Mu family's second branch was already having an internal conflict. Mu Erkshu's expression was very calm. He kowtowed before Old Master Mu and said, Old Master, please allow me to report. You want to quibble with your father, too? Mu Erkshu calmly shook his head. Not at all. However, I have my own reasons for doing so. Your reason is to cause the destruction of our entire Mu family. Mu Jingyang, who was at the side, flew into a rage and raised his leg to kick Mu Erkshu. Mu Jingxiao hurriedly stopped him. Old 5, don't be rash. Let's hear what else he has to say. As a son, I couldn't stop my father. It's my fault. It's my fault, but as a disciple of the Mu family, I know my bottom line. As Mu Erkshu spoke, he took out a brocade box from his inner world and presented it with both hands. Grandpa, grandson is willing to help father to get close to the person blessed by the heavens because of this. Be careful. Mu Jingzhuang pushed his fourth son, Mu Jingxiao, and the rest back defensively. He pointed at him and said angrily, "What kind of harmful thing is in your box?" "Fifth uncle, you'll know once you open it." Mu Erkshu lowered his eyebrows. However, before Mu Jingzhao and the rest could do anything, the brocade box in Mu Erkshu's hand suddenly flew out and landed in the little crown princess's hand. Crown princess. Xiao Ye's heart skipped a beat as he quickly raised his hand to stop her. The little crown princess raised her hand to stop him. Her expression was calm as she said, "They're just some interesting little fellows. They can't hurt me at all." Then he raised his hand and opened the brocade box. Everyone only heard a buzzing sound as hundreds of pale things flew out, giving everyone a fright. However, they quickly calmed down again. This was because these little things that flew out were all controlled by the young crown prince consort within a transparent, round, watercolored boundary. No matter how they thrashed about inside, they still couldn't escape from that defensive boundary. What a powerful water spirit defensive barrier. Everyone sighed with emotion. From the Mu family's point of view, they always felt that this was the little crown princess's limit, but it wasn't the case every time. The little crown princess would surprise them from time to time, making them inexplicably feel that this crown princess's potential was endless. What the hell is this? Mu Jingzhao's expression changed. Chapter 4089. They're a batch of skeletal flying beasts bred by the All-Seers people using improved medicine. Looking at the original form of these little fellows, they should be flying beasts like hummingbirds. At this moment, their skin and flesh had long withered, leaving only a handful of pale bones. Grandfather, as you can see now, I contacted the All-Seers people to gather more information for everyone. Mu Erkshu took a deep breath and kowtowed heavily to the ground. I only approached you for the sake of my family. Don't make irresponsible remarks, Arbor coldly interrupted him. A faint cold light flashed through Mu Erkshu's lowered eyes. You originally wanted to release these little fellows and cause chaos by surprise, then take the opportunity to escape. Why do you say that, Crown Princess? No matter how glib your tongue is, you can't wash away the crime of following Mu Jingxing and destroying the Mu family's talisman array. You and Mu Jingxing went to the Mu family's mountain gate together to welcome the group of All-Seers disciples that Mu Jingfeng brought. You killed your way into the Mu family and killed many clan members. This is definitely the truth, right? Bastard! Mu Jingzhuang pointed at Mu Erkshu and shouted angrily, "Father, elders, the second branch definitely can't be allowed to stay." Mu Tsang sighed faintly and looked at Mu Jingxing and the others. He shook his head and said, "Then, remove the second branch's name from the Mu family's genealogy and banish them from the capital." Father. Mu Jingzhuang called out in dissatisfaction, as if silently blaming his father for not dealing with matters with enough severity. Such a great crime of betraying the clan, yet he only raised it up high and let it go lightly. This punishment was too light. But how could he understand Mu Tsang's heart as a father? Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs, let alone personally giving the order to kill the second branch's entire family. Mu Tsang knew that he could not do it. Since the second branch had disloyal intentions towards the Mu family, they could no longer stay in the family and were banished far away. In the future, whether their family was rich or poor, it had nothing to do with the family. "No, grandfather, you can't chase me out of the family." Mu Ro-yi cried out with a frightened expression. "Grandfather, I'm your biological granddaughter, grandfather." Mu Tsang waved his hand and had several disciples of the Mu family drag the entire second branch out. Mu Ro-e wanted to scream again, but an impatient Mu clan disciple found a rag and stuffed it into her mouth. As Mu Jingxing was taken out, he shouted angrily, "I refuse to accept this. I won't accept it no matter what." Old Patriarch. First Elder frowned and couldn't help but say, "Will the people of the Mu family's second branch cause any more trouble?" After all, from the looks of it, this family was not going to let the matter rest. Mu Tsong shook his head in disappointment and exhaustion. "Send someone to keep an eye on them. Tell them to pack up and leave the city." With that, he turned to look at the Crown Prince and Arbor with an apologetic expression. "Your Highness, I've made a fool of myself." Prince Mo shook his head and didn't say anything. Arbor glanced at the group of skeletal hummingbirds that were trapped in his water spirit barrier and couldn't get out no matter how hard they tried. After some thought, he first threw them into a purple storage talisman. She could take these little things out to study when she had the time. She could see that a black crystal the size of a grain of rice was suspended in each of these little fellows' half-fist-sized skull. Chapter 4090. If she could peel off these black crystals and study them carefully. She didn't know if she could find a way to crack them. However, she had a lot of things to do now, so she'd have to wait until she had the time to study them. This thing couldn't be rushed. After Arbor finished thinking, he raised his head and looked in the direction of Mu Tsong and the others. He stood up and said, "Take care of the rest, we'll return to the palace first." Then he took out a box and threw it to Old Man Mu. "There are a few sets of defense array glyphs inside. See if you can set them up around the house." Mu Tsong's expression was a bit excited. He took the box and nodded, then stood up. "Jojo. Crown Princess, please wait." First Elder also hurriedly stood up and presented a token with the Mu family emblem with both hands. "This is the family emblem. In fact, it should have been given to you when you came out of Chaoyang Pavilion. You're the chosen patriarch of Chaoyang Pavilion. If it was in the past, perhaps some clansmen would be dissatisfied. However, from now on, I believe that no one will raise any doubts." Arbor frowned slightly. The three elders cupped their hands and said in unison, "Crown Princess, please don't refuse. Crown Princess, please don't refuse." Arbor nodded and raised his hand to take the token from First Elder. He said faintly, "Since you want me to be the patriarch, then from this moment on, you have to listen to me in everything, including the daily training of the clan's disciples and so on." The three elders nodded in unison. "We'll listen to the patriarch's instructions." Then, the patriarch's succession ceremony, Arbor shook his head. "Unusual times, let's keep everything simple. Gather all the disciples here." The Mu family had gone through 2 great battles and lost more than half of its disciples. Now, the entire family, from the Elder Council to the clan's ordinary disciples, added up to less than 1,000 people. However, after the 2 great battles, the ordinary disciples' temperament had improved a lot. This was actually a good thing. Many cancer-like existences in the family had been purged. After removing the dregs, what was left should be the essence. Even so, Xiao Mu still looked down on these people from the Mu clan. After all, compared to the phoenixes, the Mu family's combat prowess was incomparable. A quarter of an hour later, many of the Mu family's disciples were neatly dressed and gathered in front of the hall. A group of disciples lined up in a square formation and stood under the broad steps, looking up at the people standing in front of the hall. The little crown princess stood at the front of the crowd expressionlessly, staring at them with a sharp gaze. "Greetings, Patriarch." The 3 elders of the Mu clan cupped their hands together. Following that, the disciples at the bottom of the stairs took a step forward in unison, kneeled on one knee, and cupped their hands in salute. "Greetings, Patriarch." "Greetings, Patriarch." The voices of the crowd of disciples were loud and clear, like the waves of the sea spreading outwards, shaking the mountain forest and slowly rippling in the air. In the darkness before dawn, that voice rose and fell for a long time. Everyone's heart was surging with emotions. "Today, Tian Yun killed my people and trampled on my land. In the future, he would make him pay with his blood. He would pay 100 times the price." As soon as the little crown princess finished speaking, the disciples immediately raised their arms and shouted loudly, Blood for blood. Blood for blood. Mood Song stroked his beard and nodded comfortingly. Chapter 4091. Open the city gates. His Highness Prince Chin has returned to the capital. Open the city gates. Following waves of excited shouts, the city guards busied themselves. As the winch moved, 2 rows of soldiers worked together to push open the heavy city gates made of huge rocks from the inside out. Duan Yu was dressed in pitch-black military armor, and his long hair was tied into a ponytail that hung down to his waist. With a whip in hand, he strode forward on his horse. After so many days of marching, his originally porcelain-white skin now revealed a healthy wheat color. Looking at the cheering commoners on both sides of the street, a faint trace of astonishment flitted through the man's inky eyes. In his opinion, Mo Lien dispatched 1 million soldiers to station in Fengyang City to lend him a hand. Naturally, it was impossible for them to attack. However, the entire Tsang province's imperial court was unaware, and neither were the commoners. Thus, in their opinion, His Highness Prince Chin, who could persuade the Divine Prefecture army to withdraw and return home without suffering any losses in Tsang province, was simply a godlike existence. Right at this moment, Wu Yong led a group of people out of the city to welcome them. When they met, he immediately dismounted with a wide smile and went forward to greet them. This old official greets His Highness Prince Chin. Prime Minister Wu, no need to be so courteous. Duan Yu nodded slightly. Wu Yong couldn't help but step forward in joy. The tall and slender young man beside him also stepped forward to greet him. Greetings, His Highness Prince Chin. Duan Yu swept him a nonchalant glance. Wu Yong turned to glare at that young man and waved his hand, indicating for him to retreat. He then said to Duan Yu with a smile, Your Highness, His Majesty sent this old official to welcome you. Let's return to the palace now. His Majesty has been waiting for your Highness since early this morning, so he must be anxious now. Duan Yu nodded slightly. There was a small situation on the way, so we were delayed. Thankfully, your Highness returned safely. This is our entire Tsang province's blessing. Wu Yong chuckled as he mounted his horse and led the group to retreat slightly, calling for Duan Yu to go first. After the caravan advanced, the commoners on both sides of the street cheered thunderously for His Highness Prince Chen's name. Their high spirits and enthusiasm made Duan Yu feel a bit strange. If they knew the truth, Duan Yu furrowed his brows and remained silent. Behind the crowd, a blue and white palanquin had been waiting for a long time. At this moment, a soft voice sounded from the palanquin. Xiao Ju, help me out. Let's walk forward. Miss, it's too crowded here. Be careful. The maidservant disapprovingly helped her miss out of the sedan. He reached out and grabbed her arm. Miss, it's so messy here. It's not appropriate to squeeze through. Then help me stand there. This woman was about 20 years old. She had a slender figure and fair skin. She was obviously a young lady from a large aristocratic family. Miss, you haven't fully recovered from your injuries, so you shouldn't come up and down again. Although the maidservant called Xiao Ju was grumbling, her footsteps moved as she supported her young miss and walked towards the stairs behind her. Now that Qi Liren was standing at a higher height, she could clearly see the man in the middle of the crowd, who was slowly riding his horse along the wide street. It's really him, Xiao Ju, it's really him. Yes. Xiao Ju nodded and said, that day, when Miss finished her consultation with Divine Physician Gao and returned to the city, she encountered His Highness Prince Chin. I heard that His Highness left the city in a hurry that day because of his mother. Chapter 4092. His mother. Qi Liren turned her head slightly to glance at the maidservant. What happened to his mother? His Highness's mother, noble consort Duan, passed away some time ago. The maidservant lamented. His Highness stayed on Lonely Mountain for a whole month to keep vigil over his mother's coffin. Every commoner in the capital knows about this. Everyone praises His Highness the Fourth Prince for his filial piety and intelligence, far surpassing all the princes in the court. Qi Liren pursed her lips into a smile and nodded, a faint luster flowing in her eyes. Let's go back and discuss this with family head. The young maidservant was taken aback. Discuss what? Although she didn't understand her miss's meaning, she didn't say anything and helped her miss down the steps, returning to the sedan chair. Miss, your injuries are quite serious. Divine Physician Gao's meaning is that if there's nothing else, Miss should recuperate more at home. Got it? Qi Liren's hand moved, but before spiritual energy could form, she felt a stifling pain in her chest. She could only give up and sigh. My injuries have damaged my lungs and meridians. I reckon I won't be able to fully recover without a year or so. Don't worry, Mississippi. With Divine Physician Gao's diagnosis and treatment, you will slowly recover. The young maidservant flattered, you are our clan's most talented miss. You were injured because of the clan's affairs this time, so family head will definitely distribute the best pills to you. As the maidservant spoke, she helped her miss into the sedan chair. Qi Liren was being carried forward. Involuntarily, she twisted her two slender fingers and lifted the curtain of the sedan chair to look over. However, she only saw that graceful and handsome figure walking far away, leaving only a bit of the setting sun's afterglow following him. Qi Liren smiled knowingly and pursed her lips before lowering the sedan chair curtain. Marrying should be marrying an exceptionally good man. Your Highness, what is this? The young man following beside left Prime Minister Wu Yong impudently stepped forward on his horse and pointed at a bulging bundle tied to the saddle. Prime Minister Wu irritably glared at that young man. Unruly, withdraw. The young man pursed his lips and took advantage of the situation to retreat a few steps behind Wu Yong. A gift for second imperial brother, Duan Yu replied nonchalantly. For the second prince? The young man blinked and asked curiously, can this subordinate take a look? Shut up. Wu Yong's expression changed. He turned his head and glared at the young man. With a spurious smile, Duan Yu tossed that bulging bundle to the young man. The young man immediately beamed with joy. Before Prime Minister Wu could reprimand him, he immediately opened the bundle. From within, a bloody head was revealed. He was so scared that he rolled off the horse and vomited. With Miss Wu's gall, it's best that you don't casually open other people's gift packages. Duan Yu coolly tossed down this sentence before galloping forward on his horse. Prime Minister Wu couldn't help but smile bitterly. He turned around and glared at his daughter who had vomited so much that her face had turned pale. He shook his head and said, I told you not to follow, but you insisted on following. Look, you've made His Highness unhappy. Wu Rome vomited for a while before wiping her face with her sleeve. She angrily tied up the bundle again and mounted her horse. Your Highness. Wu Ruome chased after him. I'm not a coward. Duan Yu turned a deaf ear to her cries. He had already entered Songzhou's imperial city and entered the palace to meet the emperor. Chapter 4093. That night, the announcement to crown the fourth prince as the crown prince came. The ceremony would be held in the Taizong Temple in Mount Taiyuan 3 days later. The entire Songzhou was in an uproar. There was almost no opposition in the imperial court. After all, the fourth prince had just solved such a big problem in the divine land. Everyone had seen his ability to remain calm. Second prince, second prince. A guard trembled as he ran in with a bundle in his hands. He knelt on the ground and said, Second prince, His Highness the fourth prince, oh no, His Highness the crown prince sent someone to deliver a gift. The second prince and the third prince were sitting there discussing something. They really didn't expect that the announcement to crown the crown prince would come so quickly. It simply caught them off guard. They thought that even if Rongli was deposed, the matter of selecting the next crown prince would have to go through a series of discussions and debates in the imperial court. Who would have thought that it would be so fast that it almost shocked them? When the two of them received the news, they went to the imperial court at night to see His Majesty. However, they were blocked outside. The steward eunuch seemed to mean that His Majesty's health was getting worse and he needed more rest. Then why did he send the edict overnight? The second prince walked up and down in the hall. At this time, when he saw the guard come forward, he couldn't help but shout, What gift? His face was very ugly. He didn't expect that after suppressing the Empress and Rong Li's family, this matter was still not over. After suppressing Rong Li, Duan Xiaoxi took advantage of it. Now that he thought about it, it was really abominable. This fourth prince was even more abominable than Rong Li's family. Wasn't this just watching from the sidelines, watching them fight each other, and then reaping the benefits from the fisherman's quarrel? The guard unwrapped the bag with trembling hands. The second prince took a look and his face became more and more ugly. A head rolled out of the bag. Of course, he could not recognize this person. This was the leader of the assassination team he sent. He originally planned to let them kill Duan Xiaoxi on his way back, but now it seemed that this assassination was a complete failure. The hundreds of assassins he sent were all killed by the fourth prince. The third prince took a deep breath. His expression suddenly changed as he asked, "Second imperial brother, who is this person?" Fourth prince is actually so arrogant, directly sending a head to second brother? The third prince shouted angrily, "Second brother, we must not let this matter rest." At this moment, the second prince's mind was in a mess. Hearing this, he couldn't help but glare at him in annoyance. "How am I not done with him? Second brother, as long as we can afford the price, are we afraid that we won't be able to find someone?" The third prince took out a spirit coin card from his pocket and pushed it in front of the second prince. He furrowed his brows and said angrily, "Let's go to Jiawei City's black market and issue a mission. In for a penny, in for a pound. Give this guy." The third prince made a throat-slitting gesture. The second prince's eyes lit up slightly. He raised his hand and patted the third prince's shoulder. "Third brother, if I can ascend the throne, I will definitely not forget your kindness." Of course, of course." The third prince chuckled and said, "Second brother, you know me. I'm really devoted to Big Brother." The second prince's eyes flashed, and he nodded with a smile. Then he turned around and scolded the guard, "What are you still standing there for? Throw this thing out." The fourth prince thought that by sending a head over he could make him afraid. How ridiculous! Chapter 4094. That guard trembled and was just about to tie up the package with the human head again. Suddenly, a buzzing sound was heard, and several mosquitoes flew out of the skull. As soon as the mosquitoes touched his hands, they immediately ignited into a raging fire. He was in so much pain that he threw the package to the ground and screamed as he retreated. These fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes were really very powerful. In just a few minutes, they had burned the person to a crisp, leaving only a pile of bones that fell to the ground with a thud. This unforeseen event scared the second prince and the third prince so much that they started to tremble all over. The two of them shouted in unison, "Protect the emperor! Protect the emperor!" Many guards in the courtyard rushed in and surrounded the two princes. They waved the swords in their hands in a disorderly manner to cut down the mosquitoes in the air. However, those fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes flew extremely fast and at extremely tricky angles. In a moment of carelessness, several guards were bitten. Immediately, a wave of evil fire burned from their bodies. This burn scared the many guards around them and they hurriedly moved aside. Just as they moved aside, a gap appeared in the group of guards that surrounded the two princes. With a buzzing sound, two fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes flapped their wings and flew in that direction. Their speed was abnormally fast and they flew in front of the second prince in just a few seconds. Cold sweat dripped down the second prince's head. His eyes were fixed on the two mosquitoes flying in front of him, and his eyes couldn't help but meet at a point. When he saw the two fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes flapping their wings and flying towards his face with a buzzing sound. The second prince didn't say anything and hurriedly opened his defensive spirit tool. At the same time, he pulled a guard in front of him to block. That guard was bitten by the poisonous mosquito and a flame ignited in his body. As for the other poisonous mosquito that pounced on the second prince's face, it was blocked by his defensive barrier. The second prince let out a sigh of relief and secretly rejoiced in his heart. It seemed that these poisonous mosquitoes couldn't break through his level 15 defensive spirit tool for the time being. However, as soon as the defensive spiritual artifact was activated, the spiritual energy in his body was being consumed at an abnormally fast rate. In order to prevent himself from dying from the exhaustion of his spiritual power, the second prince hurriedly grabbed the third prince. The two of them were escorted into the inner hall by the guards. They sealed all the doors and windows, and only then did their bodies collapse weakly. The third prince's face was a little pale as he said, "I didn't expect fourth prince to be so vicious." Not only did he chop off the assassin's head, but he also gave him a few mosquitoes that could poison people. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too few of them, he and his second brother might have really died there. "It's still all right," the third prince stammered. "There aren't many mosquitoes. Otherwise, both of us brothers would have died here." The second prince's face was full of malice. "Do you think he didn't think that such a small number of poisonous mosquitoes is not enough to kill us? Then he is." The third prince raised his head and looked at his second brother in astonishment. "He did it on purpose." The second prince gritted his teeth and said, "He deliberately tormented us and used this as a pretext to tell us not to act blindly without thinking. Rosé, he has countless ways to make us brothers die quietly." The third prince shuddered. But he saw the second prince's eyes ruthlessly say, "I'll send someone to Joe City right now and see how long he can be arrogant and despotic. Fourth Duan, if you block the way, you deserve to die." Chapter 4095. The second prince has already received your highness's gift, the hidden guard Ing reported dryly with downcast eyes. Duan Yu leaned against the window, his fingers casually flipping through a book, but his eyes didn't linger on it at all. "Return to the academy in 3 days." Ing was taken aback. Is it because of the Heaven Origin Tournament's finals? But with His Majesty's current condition, it seems somewhat unwise for your highness to leave at this time. Everyone knew that it was better to stay in Phoenix Emperor City at this critical time. Duan Yu knitted his brows. "I have an appointment with someone." Ing sighed. He knew he couldn't persuade him, so he didn't say anything else. As a subordinate, he would do whatever his master said. At this time, a person appeared from the window, and his figure swayed slightly. Ing quickly walked out the door and soon returned to Duan Yu's side. "Your Highness, there's news from the second prince's side. That person sent people to Jiaowei City overnight." Duan Yu blinked, and his fingers subconsciously flipped through a page of his book. He asked dryly, "He wants to hire assassins again? Didn't he have anything more interesting?" His methods were so inferior that it was simply disappointing. "Your Highness, we've already sent people to keep an eye on them. Should we?" Duan Yu waved his hand absent-mindedly. "No need. Since it's something that can be solved with money, why go through so much trouble?" He said indifferently, "You also go and issue a mission." Ing bowed obediently in astonishment, and his expression was a bit odd when he left. In terms of spending money? Could this second prince compare to His Highness in terms of wealth? However, the second prince would probably cry if His Highness screwed him over like this. "We don't have enough men of sacrifice recently. If the people from Joe City come, you will lead people to capture them. Whether it's feeding them drugs or extracting their souls, we'll keep them for our own use. Let these people do the dangerous missions. Don't worry, I have plenty of puppet talismans. You just need to lead people to capture them. This will also prevent our people from going out on missions. I'm always worried that your brains aren't good enough and you'll be tricked to death. It's not easy for us to nurture you all." Ing walked out with a twitch of his mouth. He waved his hand, and several figures appeared beside him. "Do you understand what your highness means? I want him alive. After capturing them, search their belongings and gather enough money to go to Jiaowei City and issue a mission to protect His Highness." The worst part was His Highness had said that anyone who came from Jiaowei City was basically a fugitive. Regardless of whether they came to kill him or to protect him, he would capture them and keep them alive. Whose Highness could be so deceitful? This was the prelude to causing trouble. If the city lord of Jiaowei City knew the details, it was unknown whether or not he would come to His Highness with his sword. His black city had suddenly become empty. All the assassins had been taken away. This was not someone's deliberate bait. He had walked right into the trap. At the same time, Dean Yun, who was far away in Wind Thunder City, had successively received a few groups of students and instructors of the academy. At this moment, the dean was listening to the report of a student who had rushed in with a dumbfounded expression. Someone else is here. Yun Piaomiao asked expressionlessly, what amazing academy came this time? He really wanted to ask the people in charge of these academies if they had nothing better to do. Chapter 4096. What did the Imperial Academy's Tianyuan ranking finals have to do with you people? Did you have nothing better to do? You came to the Imperial Academy to watch the competition, but in reality you came to pick a fight. Yun Piaomiao paced back and forth on Ethereal Peak with his hands behind his back. Go, ask the little stoic when they're coming back. This was truly incredible. There were so many other academies fighting their way to the Imperial Academy, so how could they not accept the challenge? Wouldn't they be cowards if they didn't accept the challenge? The Crown Princess and the others should be back on the day of the competition, the Cultivation Hall's chief Elder Ku said with a chuckle as he sipped tea from his teacup. But you don't have to worry. Elder Ku took another sip of tea and said with a chuckle, the little Crown Princess and the others are very responsible. They probably won't abandon our academy. They'll naturally come back when the time comes. Yun Piaomiao really wanted to chuckle at him. The little fellow was so angry when she left. I wonder if she'll be so angry that she won't come back. How's that possible? Elder Ku waved his hand vigorously. Although I haven't interacted with this child for a long time, I understand her personality very well. You understand? Yun Piaomiao couldn't resist rolling his eyes. What kind of understanding do you have? Of course. Elder Ku chuckled and stroked his extremely smooth beard. A little fellow like the little stoic who has a sharp tongue but a soft heart won't blame Headmaster Yun Fei. A proud little fellow like that will only blame herself when something happens. How could she blame others? Yun Piaomiao was startled when he heard this. He then turned to glance at Elder Ku and nodded pensively. Elder, you're quite knowledgeable. Elder Ku huffed and glared as he snorted. I've crossed more bridges than you've walked on. I've read the world's myriad forms. Is there anything I don't know? All right. Don't worry. Let's settle down those academies who came to cause trouble first. Headmaster. The two team mentors from Umbra Academy and Joe Academy request an audience. Yun Piaomiao's handsome face tensed up, revealing a displeased expression. These people really don't know when to stop? Yun Piaomiao raised her head and saw two instructors, one tall and one short, one fat and one skinny, walking towards her with a smile on their faces. Dean Yun, it's an honor to meet you. Yun Piaomiao looked at the two expressionlessly. Oh, so it's Instructor He Wei from the Umbra Academy and Instructor Kuo-fu from the Joe Academy. It's an honor to meet you. The middle-aged scholar, Instructor He Wei, laughed dryly. He could see the dissatisfaction in Dean Yun's eyes. He hurriedly said with a smile, Dean, please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit you. Yun Piaomiao waved her hand and said indifferently, are the two instructors uncomfortable living in the academy? No. Instructor He Wei hurriedly said with a smile, the academy's hospitality is very considerate. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Before Yun Piaomiao could say anything, the short, fat and broad-axe instructor spoke in a booming voice. I'm here to discuss the heaven ranking battle with Dean Yun. Yun Piaomiao was confused. What do you mean? It's the heaven ranking battle. Why do I need to discuss it with you outsiders? Instructor Kuo-fu chuckled. Since so many academies have gathered in Wind Thunder City, why don't we have a big competition? Chapter 4097. Flap, flap, flap. A small mechanical bird paced back and forth outside the window, knocking on the window. Lord Jojo, who was lying by the window and playing with Xiao Bao's precious beast, squinted her big watery eyes and glanced at that fellow listlessly. These few days, she was busy supervising the Mu family's group of troublemakers to practice martial arts, which made her unbearably busy. Today, she finally had nothing to do, so she was lying here and dozing off for a while. Who knew that a mechanical bird would come? At a glance, it was obvious that this mechanical bird was sent by that fellow Yun Piaomiao. When Arbor thought of Yun Piaomiao, she thought of her brother Yun Fiang and couldn't help but secretly get angry. She allowed that mechanical bird to continuously peck at the window. After a long while, she impatiently opened the window and let that little fellow fly in. After the little mechanical bird hopped in, it opened its beak and spat out a roll of paper. Its beak opened and closed, saying, "The location of the final match has been changed to Joe City's St. Joe Arena. Please arrive at Joe City's St. Joe Arena on time before 7 o'clock 3 days later. No waiting for you." Arbor suddenly sat up straight. For a moment, she thought that she was hearing things. She grabbed that mechanical bird back and patted its head. The little machine-operated bird miserably repeated what it had just said. Lord Jojo expressionlessly patted it again. The little mechanical bird repeated. She patted it again. And again when she patted the bird's head for the 5th time, Prince Mo was just about to stride into the bedroom. She heard that mechanical bird let out a flustered and exasperated cry. "Are you done yet? How many times do you repeat that sentence? Please arrive at Joe City's St. Joe Arena on time before 7 o'clock 3 days later. No waiting for you." Flap, 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 flap. The little mechanical bird vigorously flapped its wings and angrily hopped out of the window. It flapped its wings and flew high up into the blue sky. Arbor expressionlessly looked at the bird that flew out. She stretched out her finger and poked Xiao Bao's precious beast, whose butt was facing her. Xiao Bao's precious beast had probably already been oppressed. Right now, it didn't even want to move its butt. When she poked it, it shook its body slightly and continued to lie on the table, pretending to be dead. Mo Lien couldn't help but twitch her lips. How deranged was his little wife to the point that none of the little beasts wanted to pay attention to her. The only weirdo who could anger the mechanical bird was probably his little wife. Lady Qiao Qiao expressionlessly raised her head and looked at her husband who was walking in from the door. She raised her small arm. Mo Lien immediately hurried over and picked her up with a smile. Together, they sat on the couch in front of the window. He rubbed his head against her small face and asked, "Wifey, what's going on? That mechanical bird just now, was it sent by the Academy to inform us of the competition time?" "Well, it's broken," Arbor said expressionlessly. Mo Lien wanted to laugh but quickly held it back. How could it be broken? It repeated itself 5 or 6 times, asking us to go to some arena in Joe City for the competition. If it's not broken, then what is it? He had never heard of the Royal School's Heavenly Yuan ranking competition being held at Joe City's underground black markets battle arena. What was wrong with it? Mo Lien took the roll of paper from the little girl's hand and flipped it open. She read 10 lines at a glance and smiled. Joe Academy, Umbra Academy, and the rest of the 6 academies have all gone to Wind Thunder City to look for Principal Yun. Originally, they were only going to watch the competition. In the end, Instructor Quafu from Joe Academy proposed to upgrade the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition to a competition that all the academies in the 3 continents can participate in. Chapter 4098. The little girl pursed her lips disinterestedly. "I don't want to go anymore." Since any Tom, Dick, and Harry could participate in this Heavenly Yuan ranking competition, then wasn't the previous preliminaries meaningless? Mo Lien immediately understood the little emperor's meaning and couldn't help but pinch her small face in amusement. Don't worry, those academies that plan to participate in the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition will hand over a large amount of resources to participate. In addition, they also have to participate in the preliminaries. The preliminaries are only 3 days long, but the intensity should be greater than the danger we encountered when we went to Phoenix Grove last time. Moreover, after the preliminaries, there's basically no time for them to rest and reorganize. They'll directly enter the finals. Arbor took the paper from the man's hand and looked at the instructions and regulations on it. He nodded and said, "Joe Academy and the others will agree to such harsh conditions. They must be plotting something." It was no wonder that the little fellow thought of them as a conspiracy. They truly wanted to participate in this competition with such a strenuous and unrewarding task, yet they still had to invite everyone from the Royal Academy to Joe City to participate in the competition? No matter how one looked at it, it looked like they were plotting something. Mo Lien smiled faintly and picked up the little fellow, walking towards the bathing pool. Who cared what kind of conspiracy they were scheming? In any case, if they dared to scheme against them, they would just smack them to death. The little girl tugged at the corner of his lapel and raised her large eyes to glance at him defensively. What are you trying to do in broad daylight? Emolien blinked and looked at his wife innocently. Taking a bath? What bath in broad daylight? The little stoic was a bit speechless. After washing up, this hubby will accompany you for an afternoon nap. Jojo, you used to take an afternoon nap every day when you were young. Now that you're a few years older, it seems like you also take less afternoon naps. Nonsense. The little stoic stubbornly refused to admit her mistake. Which day am I not cultivating? Who takes an afternoon nap? Your whole family takes afternoon naps. Emolien grinned and rubbed his head against her head. Jojo, be good. Eat more and sleep well, then our baby will grow Io. Why are you hitting your hubby's head? The afternoon sun brushed past the window lattice. Little Treasure was lying there peacefully, as if it had nothing to live for. It was sad and beautiful. In the bustling harbor, ships of all sizes shuttled back and forth. There were ships anchored at the shore and magnificent pleasure boats slowly docked at the shore. There were even more large cargo ships. One after another, they loaded and unloaded their cargo, shuttling back and forth in an endless stream. Lady Jojo stood at the bow of the ship. She was dressed in a rose-colored dress and wore a jade phoenix hairpin on her head. Her face was devoid of any expression as usual. Hugging a round treasure beast, the little stoic leaned against the crown prince's side and surveyed the surroundings for a while before looking up at the crown prince. We've arrived? Because they had never been to Joe City before, the teleportation glyph array wasn't sure if it could teleport them to the city in one go. Therefore, Emolien brought Tong and the others to a nearby teleportation portal in Arbor. Seeing that Joe City wasn't too far away, they directly took a ship to come over. She felt that it was more reliable. Pa. Classmate Xiao, classmate Emo, you finally arrived. Pa. A burst of hearty laughter came from the front. Arbor and the others looked up and saw Instructor Ma from the cultivation hall leading 17 to 18 students to welcome them with a grin. His expression was full of gratitude that said, "You finally arrived." Chapter 4099. The little stoic looked around. Where are Xian Xian and the others? The cultivation hall's mentor Ma laughed mockingly and said, Yesterday, student Xian Xian and the others had a conflict with several students from Joe Academy. Student Qi Xian Xian and student Ko Hongwen both suffered minor injuries. Seeing the little stoic's small face instantly darken, Mentor Ma hastily waved his hand and said, "But don't worry, the other party is 100 times more miserable than them. They aren't minor injuries." Emolien led her displeased wifey down the ship's bow and glanced at Mentor Ma. "Why is that?" Mentor Ma sighed with a bitter expression. "This matter is a bit complicated. Let's return to the Academy's encampment first." Arbor and Emolien naturally wouldn't refuse. Since the Academy had already arranged accommodations for them, then that was for the best. It would save them the trouble of looking all over the place to find a place to stay. Mentor Ma and the others enthusiastically led them to the Academy's accommodations. This competition will probably last for about 7 days. Mentor Ma led the way in front and turned to say to them with a chuckle, "Principal Yun has a manor in Joe City, and it's not far from Joe Arena. We'll stay in that manor for a while for the time being." Arbor couldn't help but interrupt as he listened to the mentors nagging along the way. "What's going on at Joe Academy?" Mentor Ma was hesitating on how to speak when a student beside him couldn't resist saying, "It's our first time coming to Joe City. I feel like their night market is quite lively. Especially at night, it's quite nice to walk through the streets and have a drink or two in Joe City's taverns. After we settled down, we invited some friends to the tavern for a drink yesterday. At that time, student Ko Hongwen and student Xian Xian also went with us to play. Who knew that we would run into Joe Academy's green-haired group along the way, and everyone got into a fight at the slightest disagreement." Another student beside him hastily interjected, "What slightest disagreement? They were the ones who started it. That green-haired bastard was fucking arrogant and acted like a big brother in front of us. He said he was the relative of the Mad Python mercenary group's vice commander, the largest mercenary group in Joe City. You're pretty good at cursing, but you don't have any skills. You were slapped to the ground by Xian Xian. That's right, that's right. This green-haired guy was stunned by Xian Xian's slap and didn't get up for a long time. After that, the people from their academy went crazy and attacked us. If it wasn't for the fact that they had the advantage in numbers, we would have fought them to the end last night. Mentor Ma smacked the student's head with the back of his hand and scolded in exasperation. The academy sent you out to train, not to cause trouble and fight all day long. Teacher, fighting is also a form of training. All right, we're just around the corner. If you have anything to say, we'll talk when we get back. Mentor Ma chuckled and said to Arbor, Student Xiao, don't worry. Student Xian Xian and the others are fine. You call this nothing serious? The little stoic's small stoic face was taut as she expressionlessly picked up the little fatty's drooping arm. Little fatty immediately squealed like a pig being slaughtered. Mentor Ma's face turned green. What's going on? You weren't injured that badly just now. Mentor, the people from Joe Academy just came to beat us up. Several students shouted, filled with righteous indignation. Chapter 4100. Right. That green-haired guy brought a few experts and gave little fatty a good beating. We couldn't even stop him in time. Oh my waist. Qi Xianxian clutched her waist and waved her hand to have the students supporting her move more gently. Jojo, Your Highness the Crown Prince, you're here. Qi Xianxian forced a smile at the little stoic with a bitter expression. Don't pull a long face, I'm fine. Don't listen to their nonsense, it's not that serious. Which green-haired guy? Arbor asked irritably. Did he have nothing better to do? It wasn't enough that he finished a match yesterday, and he even specially came to fight today? What the heck? Little fatty shifted to the side and supported Qi Xianxian to sit down. He huffed. If it weren't for Duanmu and the others being in closed-door cultivation, how could we have lost to them? Arbor knitted his brows in displeasure and took out his needle bag. Xianxian, I'll give you 2 injections first. Everyone watched from the side as the young crown prince consort swiftly pierced Qi Xuanxuan's waist twice before throwing an elixir to Qi Xianxian. Within a few minutes, Xuanxuan's sprained waist healed a lot, and she could stand up and move around freely. Don't sprain it again today. Arbor frowned as he glanced at her. How can I sprain it again and again? Qi Xianxian felt much more energetic. She paced back and forth in the room a few times and shouted in a huff, if it weren't for that green-haired guy bringing a group of people to make trouble for us, how could I have sprained my waist? She was angry just thinking about it. At that time, everyone was in closed-door cultivation in their own rooms. Green-haired guy suddenly barged in and quickly found her and little fatty from Iridescent Peak Court. He called them without a second word and didn't even give them a chance to react. The competition was tomorrow, and everyone was making the best use of their remaining time to train and cultivate in closed-door cultivation. Who knew that such a thing would happen? When some of the people who were training or in seclusion were awakened and rushed out, little fatty was protecting Qi Xianxian. He was surrounded and beaten up by a few people. His arm was even broken. The most hateful thing was that when the green-haired man saw that the people from the royal school had come out, he immediately led his men and left the manor, disappearing without a trace. As she spoke, the little stoic also treated the little fatty's broken arm. She held his arm and moved it back and forth. How do you feel? I don't feel anything. The little fatty laughed honestly and quickly flattered. Jojo, your medical skills are really good. Jojo's expression was a little scary. Fatty thought that it would be better for him to behave himself. Humph. Arbor glanced at him expressionlessly. Why didn't you use the talisman? It wasn't like she didn't throw them talismans. How could they not know how to throw offensive and defensive talismans when they were beaten to such a state? Fatty shrunk his neck. I felt that, unless it was absolutely necessary, he bit his lower lip and hastily shut his mouth under the little stoic's severe gaze. When our dear Qi Xianxian saw this, she hastily came up to smooth things over. Jojo. It's actually nothing. She scratched her head. The other party didn't want our lives. Arbor swept them a glance and knew what these two fools were thinking. They felt that they couldn't rely on external objects for everything. Whether it was pills or talismans, how could they not have them on them? Chapter 4101. They all had them, and there were quite a few of them, so it wasn't a problem to use them freely. However, they were thinking that they could resolve this kind of trivial matter themselves and didn't need to rely on external forces for everything. Are you idiots? I have no objections to you fighting in a fair environment. But we're being ganged up on right now. Ganged up on. The little stoic irritably poked the little fatty's head and roared, "Are you a sandbag? Why can they casually beat you guys up to vent their anger just because they're unhappy? That's right. Don't you know how to call for help? We're all in the room. Call out and everyone will come out. Let's see if they still dare to be so arrogant." Joe City doesn't have a rule that forbids fighting before the competition. They dare to be so unbridled because they're certain that nothing will happen even if they beat you guys up. Xiao Mu coldly surveyed them from head to toe. What exactly did you guys do? They actually came to gang up on you guys? We didn't do anything. Qi Xianxian bashfully glanced at the little stoic. The little stoic. She kept feeling that there was something wrong with these two fellows. Mo Lian stifled her laughter and walked up to pull her wife's small hand. She glanced at Qi Xianxian and the little fatty. Why aren't you confessing? Confess, confess, we'll confess everything. The little fatty hastily nodded and said, nothing major actually happened at Sikong Tavern yesterday. We just quarreled with Green Hair a bit. Many students around them looked at them curiously, and one of them said, speaking of which, yesterday's incident was really a bit strange. When you guys started quarreling with Green Hair and the others, we were watching a vaudeville performance. In the end, they didn't know why they started quarreling with each other. Moreover, they even came to their encampment afterwards? It had freaking happened a day ago. How bizarre. Speaking of enmity, there didn't seem to be any. They only chased the fatty to the encampment and beat him up. The little fatty smiled good-naturedly and reached out to hold Qi Xuanxuan's hand. He then said indignantly, speaking of which, it's all that brother's fault. Everything was fine yesterday, but you all went to watch the vaudeville show. Xian Xian and I were eating in a corner of the tavern, and we didn't offend anyone. Suddenly, that guy said sourly, "Yo, you're so fat, but you can still find a pretty girl." I replied to him, "You're a single dog, what are you bullshitting about? I'll beat you up if you continue to bullshit." Everyone was speechless. Mo Lian's lips twitched. Then, without saying a word, that brother actually drew his sword and attacked me. Little fatty said angrily, "Do you think he's crazy? He even said that I insulted him? How did I insult him? Didn't I just call him a single dog?" Arbor looked at them expressionlessly. His eyes kept looking at their intertwined hands. "So, you two have decided? Why didn't he get to the point earlier?" All the students revealed an expression that said, "So that's how it is." Fuck, so he was beaten for showing off his love. Hehe, isn't this a classic example of abusing a single dog and getting bitten by a dog? Apui, who's the dog? Arbor was silent for a moment. Then why did they come to beat you up today? Everything about this incident was strange, alright? Speaking of which, they had already beaten them up yesterday. Shouldn't they have vented their anger? Why did they do this today? Qi Xianxian quickly said. Before the fatty left, he told them the address of this place and told them to challenge him if they were unhappy. Chapter 4102. So that's how it was. No wonder they were so accurate and even knew to look for Fatty Sun and the others in Iridescent Peak Court. Everyone couldn't help but facepalm and stare at student Ko Hongwen as if they were looking at an idiot. The little fatty rubbed his nose and said embarrassedly, "Didn't I, cough yesterday? Even though I lost, I didn't lose." "So you were the one who sent yourself to be beaten up?" The little fatty angrily pulled Qi Xuanxuan's hand. "Who did we disturb when we were eating in the tavern? He was the one who came up to tease my wife. If I wasn't beaten up by the crowd, would I have lost?" Arbor expressionlessly looked at the little fatty for a while and patted his shoulder. This man, what a combative creature. Most importantly, he wanted to keep up appearances and suffer. No wonder he didn't want to use talismans. He wanted to protect his wife with his own strength. Although he was childish and a little stupid, there was an indescribable feeling of love. Arbor's tense little face relaxed a little. Remember to tell me if you feel uncomfortable. Okay. The little fatty heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't know why, but he didn't dare to speak when Sir Jojo's face was tense. Point him out later. Let's go beat him up too, Arbor said expressionlessly. After all, there had to be reciprocation. Otherwise, would they be beaten up for nothing? Everyone, the little girl was indeed someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. This was clearly a disturbance caused by abusing single people. The other person's heart was already hurt. Did she want him to be hurt physically too? However, seeing that the stoic face still didn't look good, everyone shut their mouths in unison. Tomorrow's competition? Student Xiao, let me explain the competition rules to you, Mentor Ma said with a smile. Arbor nodded and got up to pull Emolien to sit down. How bad are the rules? Let's talk about it. Mentor Ma couldn't help but twitch his mouth and hurriedly said, It's not bad. It's definitely not bad. The Tianyuan competition was divided into 6 arenas. The competition would be held simultaneously. To be able to obtain the right to fight in the main arena, one had to be one of the top 100 seeded contestants. Previously, after Feng Mulin's preliminary round, the Royal School had eliminated 10,000 students. This time, only 3,000 students would be able to enter the final round. Fortunately, Dean Yun had his own large manor in Jiawei City. It was more than enough to accommodate over 3,000 teachers and students. Otherwise, with so many teachers and students coming to Jiawei City, it would be difficult to find an inn. This competition is very simple. It's just a point system. If you win 1 match, you'll get 10 points. If you win 5 matches in a row, you'll get an additional 50 points. 10 consecutive wins plus 200 points. The more consecutive victories you have, the more points you'll get. The details will be announced on the points board during the competition. Correspondingly, the deduction of points is also very fierce. Consecutive losses will also result in additional deduction of points. Mentor Ma chuckled as he continued. Therefore, in this competition, there might be a phenomenon of a few thousand people with high scores and a series of deductions for low scores. Students, work hard. There are no restrictions in the competition, so the degree of freedom is very high. In other words, as long as you have the means, just use them. Hearing this, Arbor looked at Mentor Ma in astonishment. That's strange. The rules of the Tianyuan competition seem to be very generous. Who was the generous person who came up with these rules? Students, make good use of your remaining time and work hard. Tomorrow morning, Mentor Ma will be back to bring you to the arena. Chapter 4103. Arbor followed the little fatty and Qi Xianxian, who were chatting and laughing along the way. When she arrived at the entrance of Iridescent Peak Court, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Suddenly, a thin figure appeared in front of her. She staggered a step before quickly stabilizing herself. This guy looked around in bewilderment. When he came back to his senses, he saw the young Crown Prince Consort standing in front of him. He jumped in fright and hastily bowed. Crown Prince Consort? Arbor nodded expressionlessly. Where am I? Strange, shouldn't he be in the Mu family's territory? Hey, young man, you're a child of the Mu family? The little fatty walked up curiously and patted him on the shoulder. This guy hurriedly nodded, then looked at the young Crown Princess in confusion. Crown Princess, may I ask, where is this place? This is Jiawei City. The other party immediately showed an even more confused expression, probably 10,000 curses galloping through his heart. Fuck, how did he end up in a dangerous place like Jiawei City's black market after training in Chaoyang Pavilion for a while? It was said that there were no rules in Jiawei City. People who came and went spoke with their fists. Whoever had the bigger fist had the loudest voice. Every day, who knew how many people died unnatural deaths because of picking fights? May I ask, am I here? The thin man asked with a strange expression. Arbor was silent. Mo Lien beside her couldn't help but twitch her mouth. she held back her laughter and said, "You're Mu Jiating, right?" That's right." Mu Jiating naturally recognized the Crown Prince. He hurriedly saluted the Crown Prince. "Your Highness, this one is Mu Jiating of the Mu family's side branch. A while ago, this one was fortunate enough to go to Chaoyang Pavilion set up by ancestor Chaoyang to train, and made it all the way to the 49th floor." Mu Jiating seemed to be very gratified. Speaking up to here, he couldn't help but smile, then continued, "I wonder how the others are doing now? By the way, Crown Princess, you also went to Chaoyang Pavilion at that time, right? I wonder which floor the Crown Princess made it to, 99. Mu Jiating's mouth instantly opened so wide that a duck egg could be stuffed in. "Excuse me, may I know how many people are in the top management?" 99. Jojo replied expressionlessly, "You've been in Chaoyang restaurant for 2 months. The others have already come out." That's right, he was the one who had entered Chaoyang Tower with Jojo and had only just completed the challenge Mu Jiating. It wasn't that Jojo-sama wanted to ridicule this guy, but this guy's personality was too slow. Even a turtle could crawl faster than him, okay? He wasn't afraid that others would laugh at him, because this guy was so slow that even the heavens couldn't tolerate it. Sir Jojo even went to Chaoyang restaurant to secretly observe him. He realized that this guy was seriously trying to break through the levels, working hard, cultivating, breaking through, and working even harder. He was speechless. The reason why this guy was slow was because every time he cleared a level, he would go into seclusion to cultivate for a while. Before he recovered all his spiritual power, this guy definitely wouldn't rashly rush to the next level. Therefore, the higher he went, the more dangerous the place was. Chaoyang Pavilion was full of traps, and it was very difficult to break through the array core. This guy relied on his tenacity and willpower that ordinary people didn't have, and steadily advanced. With this strange talent, he reached the 49th floor. Chapter 4104. In fact, after reaching the 40th floor, this guy would need 3 to 5 days to recover his spiritual energy every time. To tell the truth, Arbor completely forgot about this oddball later on. After all, they went to challenge Morning Sun Pavilion before her wedding on June 6th. It was freaking the end of July now. It would be weird if she remembered this guy after that. The little stoic allowed him to stay in Morning Sun Pavilion. It had nothing to do with her whether he wanted to challenge it until the end of time. Until just now, when she suddenly sensed this person being sent flying out of Morning Sun Pavilion, the little stoic hastily stopped and directly pulled his flying body in front of her. Mu Jiating simply didn't pay attention to where he flew out from. He only thought that he came out of Morning Sun Pavilion and was directly flung outside. He didn't notice that his body had stopped in midair in the star domain for a split second. A steady stream of divine power cleansed his meridians, causing his entire body to involuntarily tremble. He only faintly smelled the salty and moist scent of the sea breeze. Then why did I appear here? The little fatty looked sympathetically at Mu Jiating, this pitiful child. He knew that his little stoic definitely couldn't be bothered to explain to this guy, so he patted his shoulder. "You can stay here for the time being. You'll return with us in a few days. Don't worry, it won't be too dangerous. I'll take you out to drink tonight." Qi Xianxian pinched her nose and glanced at him. "But before that, you better wash yourself clean first." Mu Jiating turned around and saw that the little stoic and His Highness the Crown Prince had long abandoned him and left with disdainful expressions. Only then did he realize that his clothes were stuffed with filth. His perfectly fine white training clothes were so black that its original color couldn't be discerned. "No, my apologies. Brother, can you bring me to my room to bathe and change? Come with me." The little fatty smiled enthusiastically. "Oh, that's right, I still have to ask the Crown Princess later. She actually made it out of Morning Sun Pavilion's 99th floor. I wonder how long it took her." "Oh, you can just ask me about this." The little fatty's face was beaming, giving this guy a knowing blow. Jojo spent 1 day and 1 night to reach the 99th floor of Morning Sun Pavilion. Her name is now written on the stone tablet in front of your Morning Sun Pavilion. The little fatty smiled brilliantly. Morning Sun Pavilion was currently located on an island on Fish Orchid Planet. Who didn't know of the little girl's brave feat of breaking through Morning Sun Pavilion's 99th floor? Mu Jiating's jaw dropped. Morning Sun Pavilion's residence, Morning Sun Pavilion's floor, Morning Sun Pavilion, Morning Sun Pavilion's Morning Sun Pavilion. The little stoic looked around in displeasure before looking up at Mo Lien and saying, "That guy didn't come." Morning Sun, Morning Sun, Morning Sun, Morning Sun, Morning Sun, Morning Palace, Morning Night. Something happened in the palace and it will probably take a few days to deal with it. Will you be okay? Xiao Mu looked up at him. There is indeed something, but it's not that he's in trouble. It's that the Zhangzhou Emperor is about to die. Mo Lien whispered into her ear. Suddenly, a laugh was heard. Ah, I was wondering why the magpies were chirping this morning. It turns out they saw my Jojo. Prince Mo irritably threw him a cold glance. Eldest young Sir Qin blinked innocently at him and asked sarcastically, "Why didn't little fourth Duan come?" Chapter 4105. Arbor glanced at him and suddenly discovered a row of lackeys standing behind eldest Qin, who looked like a smiling tiger. He habitually ignored the Omega Kotoku, who had an icy expression and was as slender as a bamboo. Behind this guy, there was actually 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 shit, both those he had seen before and those he hadn't seen before. The entire Qin family's youngsters must have all come. The little stoic expressionlessly swept a glance over them. Her eyeballs merely swiveled in a circle before she immediately retracted her gaze. Was Jiawei City's scenery unique? She had actually attracted the entire Qin family here? When Qin Jiao saw her, his eyes clearly brightened, and he chuckled as he skipped forward. Jojo, when little Qin Jiao saw Prince Mo's icy gaze sweeping over him, he hastily corrected himself. "Crown Princess, why don't I see Duan Yu?" The little stoic was clearly in a bad mood. She glanced at him and reluctantly responded out of politeness, "He didn't come." As a result, these two words seemed to open Qin Jiao's long-sealed chatterbox, and he immediately fired off a barrage of questions. Was he delayed by something? Oh right, I heard that something happened in Zhangzhou, right? Did something happen to Duan Yu's mother? Duan Yu will be fine, right? Say, should we find a chance to go to Zhangzhou and see Io? A strong force suddenly pushed Qin Jiao away from behind. Alright, don't worry about it. Whether His Highness Prince Chen of Zhangzhou is fine or not, it has nothing to do with you. Don't block the way. A rude and unreasonable voice interrupted Qin Jiao's words. The person strode boldly to Prince Mo and the little crown princess and sized them up. A strange smile suddenly appeared on his face. This humble one is Prince Danhua of the barbarian tribe. Greetings to His Highness the Crown Prince of the Divine Province and the Crown Princess. This person held his hand across his chest. Although he saluted, his attitude was extremely arrogant and rude. When he spoke, he kept his chin slightly raised, as if he was looking at people with his nostrils. Previously, this prince has been training in the vicinity of Jiawei City, but I haven't seen any of you. That dark and sturdy Prince Kuo sized up the little crown princess again, and a malicious smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It is said that previously, my brother Zulu was beaten up by you. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but rub his forehead. In the blink of an eye, before Prince Chao could finish his words, his body strangely flew into the air. Everyone around couldn't help but twitch their mouths. With a loud bang, Yun Piaomiao, who was walking out of the room, looked speechlessly at the figure that abruptly crashed into the wall beside him. He silently glanced in the little stoic's direction. The stoic face's gaze was serene and unruffled, as if the one who sent the person flying with a kick just now wasn't himself. Cough. Dean Yun pretended to cough and gave Elder Ku, whose mouth was twitching, a look. Elder Ku raised his hand and motioned for the two disciples behind him to help Prince Chao Hua, whose head was covered in blood, up. The other party's head was bleeding from this kick, and he was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His body swayed, and he was a bit disoriented even after being helped up. You. Prince Chao's face darkened as he lowered his head to look at a small footprint on his chest. He was so angry that he couldn't even speak clearly. Chapter 4107. Arbor followed Yun Fiang to a side room. Once the room's door closed, Yun Fiang turned around and said apologetically to her, "Sorry, Jojo, you should blame me. I acted on my own and didn't think twice before acting. During this period of time, I have thought about a lot of things, and I have also realized my mistakes." Arbor raised her hand to stop him from speaking. Her clear eyes stared at the slightly pale man in front of her. Both sides of this person's hair had turned white in a short period of time. It could be seen how big of an impact Murong Sun's incident had on him. Arbor couldn't help but sigh in her heart. She said to him solemnly, "Listen to me first. Master, there's actually still hope." She should have told them earlier, but the bit of resentment in her heart made her not want to say anything to them at that time. Yun Fiang, whose complexion was originally slightly pale, looked like he was struck by something when he heard this. He instantly focused his gaze on Arbor with excitement on his face. Really? During this period of time, he buried himself in his study and searched for all sorts of treatment methods after the soul-returning pill lost its effectiveness. Unfortunately, he came up empty-handed. Unexpectedly, the little girl already found a treatment method? "Headmaster, although I have a lot of complaints about you in my heart, most of them are still grateful." The little stoic said bluntly, "After the battle at Holy Water Sect, if you didn't arrive in time and seal her in the ice coffin, I might have never seen her again. Perhaps I wouldn't have been able to see her again in this lifetime." "Jojo, can you really forgive me?" Yun Fiang asked rather emotionally. Xiao Mu nodded. "I've never blamed you." Yun Fiang knew. He knew everything. Even though the little girl never blamed him, the regret in his heart was about to drown him. "Are you willing to believe me? Headmaster, are you willing to try and give me some time to work hard?" "Of course I believe you." Yun Fiang nodded repeatedly and said, "I was foolish before. Now that I know the truth, I naturally won't continue to be foolish." "How can a pill alchemist's growth be linked to age?" Yun Fiang sighed softly and said, "I was too conceited in the past. Prince Imo was right. There was no lack of geniuses in this world. It was obvious that Jojo was a genius in alchemy. Her growth and future were limitless." "Then wait a bit," Arbor said softly. "I will definitely wake Murong Sun up." "Definitely." The little girl spoke resolutely. In that instant, Yun Fiang felt like he saw Murong Sun's shadow in her. There was a lump in his throat. He smiled to cover up the slight sadness in his heart. "Your master will definitely wake up." "He definitely will." When Yun Fiang followed the little girl out of the room, Yun Piamiao clearly felt that her elder brother's expression had relaxed a lot. His entire body wasn't as tense as before. He heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but feel somewhat comforted. Although the little girl had a stoic expression on her face all day long and seemed to be emotionless, she was actually very delicate and soft. "What a good child," Yun Piamiao thought with gratification. "Dean, what do you mean by this? Why did you send someone to drag me away?" "Dean!" The barbarian tribe's Prince Nuwa's angry roar came from behind. Yun Piamiao waved her hand as if she didn't hear him. "Prince Nuwa is tired. Please ask him to rest." Chapter 4108. Yun Piamiao turned around and stared at the students in front of him with an admonishing expression. He earnestly exhorted, "Students, we're currently in Jiawei City, so we can't act in Wind Thunder City's territory. That's because we need to be careful and vigilant at all times. We need to take precautions at all times. We don't know when someone who doesn't get along with you will suddenly pop out and attack us. Our motto is to not cause trouble. But we absolutely won't be afraid of trouble, understand?" The group of students from the royal school replied with an "oh." Yun Piamiao was immediately dissatisfied. He stood in the air and waved his arm. "Why is everyone so dispirited? You're about to enter Jiawei Arena right now. Every one of you represents the Imperial Academy's honor, understand? Show some spirit, everyone pull yourself together. Understand, students? Oh. Everyone grumpily responded again, but this time, their voices soared to the heavens. Yun Piaomiao beamed with joy and nodded. Since you understand, then let's set off. Everyone followed the group out the door like a wisp of smoke. Yun Piaomiao was all smiles as he hastily drew close to the little Stoics group. Jojo, have you made things clear with Dean Yunfei? Arbor expressionlessly glanced at him and nodded his small head reluctantly. You're truly a good child. Dean Yun lovingly reached out to rub the little fellow's head, but Prince Mo, who was glaring covetously from the side, stared at him until he retracted his hand. The dean resentfully glanced at Mo Lien and coughed lightly, saying, Student Mo, Student Duan didn't come, so we'll have to rely on you to take first place on the Heaven Origin ranking this time. Mo Lien glanced at him and said indifferently, I'll rely on my wife. The little Stoic waved her small hand, disdainfully sweeping away a faint fragrance that drifted in front of her. She didn't even bat an eyelid as she nodded and said, I'll do my best. Dean Yun couldn't help but be stupefied. The little girl's alchemy Dao was indeed exceptional, but if it was in battle? With Prince Mo here, do you think you still have a chance of winning? Most importantly, this little expression of going with the flow and taking it for granted somehow made him feel like he was being cheated. Elder Ku, who was standing at the side, looked at Dean Yun as if he was looking at an idiot. He secretly pinched his arm. Are you stupid? How could Prince Mo win against his own wife? With your intellect, how could you have been the principal of the royal school for so many years? Dean Yun came to a sudden realization and hurriedly said, Oh, followed by a series of awkward laughs. His little eyes secretly peeked at the little girl, and with an expression of trying to find something to talk about, he pretended to be relaxed and asked, right, earlier why did student Xiao suddenly make things difficult for student Yuoa? The little Stoic's face darkened and she grumbled, His shifty eyes have been staring at me the entire time. The little guy stretched out 2 fingers and gestured the teleportation distance in front of his eyes. Look, just stare at me like this. I saw it clearly. He kept staring at me. He's an idiot. Everyone, Dean Yun instantly felt like his balls were hurting. Why did he ask such an outlandish question for no reason? Most importantly, the question was outlandish, but the answer was even more outlandish. Dean Yun looked at the little Stoic in front of him with a headache. Chapter 4109. He kept feeling that the little Stoic's visit to Holy Auspicious Arena was the true beginning of the disaster. Those people harboring malicious intentions in Holy Auspicious Arena were probably going to suffer. The little Stoic expressionlessly waved her hand again. Her elegant brows involuntarily creased, and her footsteps unwittingly slowed down. The person walking at the front of the group also paused. When eldest young Sir Qin saw this, he waved his small fan in amusement. He moved closer to Arbor and asked, What's wrong, Jojo? The little girl sniffed and confirmed that the fragrance didn't come from this guy's body. When Qin Xian saw this, he also hastily lifted his sleeve to sniff himself. It was a refreshing sweet scent. Other than that, there were no other random fragrances. It doesn't stink, this guy said plausibly. Yun Piaomiao couldn't resist twitching her eyebrows. Just as she was about to speak, she saw a group turn the corner and jingle. The fragrant wind was coming from that group. There were all kinds of scents, rich and fragrant, as if all the fragrances in the world had congealed in this group. For a moment, the little Stoic's expression was grave, as if she was facing a great enemy. Eldest young Sir Qin naturally smelled it as well, and he hastily moved closer to the little Stoic while exclaiming, Wah, Jojo, are these fragrances poisonous? I feel dizzy. Have I been poisoned? Arbor expressionlessly slapped his paw away and sprinkled some powder next to him with a flick of his finger, instantly dispersing most of the strange fragrances coming from the other side. Eldest young Sir Qin wasn't pretending this time. When these fragrances were mixed together, it truly was a very strong poison. It wasn't good for people to smell these scents in this kind of environment for a long time. Meng Meiyou's expression changed drastically. 5th young Sir Qin, who was standing next to 9th Qin, also had a similar change in expression. He recognized Meng Meiyu at a glance. This was precisely that disgusting woman he encountered in Feng Mulan when his arms and legs were crippled. The fifth young sir actually didn't realize that he had actually moved and silently moved closer to Jojo. Omega Kotoku, on the other hand, seemed to have noticed it and glanced at him. At this moment, Arbor scattered some medicinal powder to disperse the messy smell. Then he looked at Meng Meiyu's team with disgust. Meng Meiyu's group consisted of about 30 women, each of them had a graceful and enchanting figure, and their attire was very revealing. In broad daylight, with her arms and legs exposed, a strong seductive wind blew in his face. Before Meng Meiyu could say anything, a woman beside her with dark green eyeliner and an extremely enchanting appearance looked towards Prince Mo and the group of people from the Qin estate with bright eyes. Wow, so many handsome men. Mo Lien and eldest Qin moved almost at the same time and stood behind Sir Jojo. It was the same recipe and the same taste. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but turn to glance at Prince Mo and inexplicably recall that period of time on Seikong planet. He didn't know when he had developed this habit, but whenever he encountered a woman he didn't want to deal with, he would habitually hide behind Sir Jojo, and every time, Sir Jojo would never disappoint them. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist raising his hand to cover his face. He saw the little stoic take a step forward and stretch out 2 fingers again. In this strange momentary silence, she made a gesture of communicating with her eyes. Chapter 41:10. What are you looking at? Arbor's expression chilled, and he suddenly flew into a rage. Who are you people? The little stoic had clearly forgotten about Meng Meiyu. Vice Cult Master Meng's legs were trembling uncontrollably. In the end, the stoic face actually didn't remember her. The main reason was that this stoic face truly intimidated her too much. Recalling that time in Phoenix Woods, she couldn't help but curse a string of fuck when she recalled that pot of all-nourishment soup afterward. Not only did she lose her arms and legs, but she also found an ugly and old man in the woods to dispel the effects of the all-nourishment soup and fought him several hundred rounds. Whenever she recalled it afterward, she would vomit incessantly. But she couldn't choose at that time, nor did she have the time to choose. If she didn't quickly dispel the effects of the medicine, she would die an undignified death. That little stoic girl's methods were truly sinister enough. Before she left, she even tossed her a pot of improved all-nourishment soup. She truly caused her to suffer. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Meng Meiyu really wanted to rush up and tear that girl apart, but she actually cowered. She understood very well that this current body actually had a strange fear reaction the instant she saw this girl. She was very scared now. The little girl was young, but she felt that her methods were very cruel and terrifying. Move aside, don't block the way, Arbor said irritably. Sensing those women's gazes all drifting towards her, the little stoic was very displeased. What are you looking at me for? Everyone, Meng Meiyu was momentarily speechless. In the end, it was the green-eyed girl next to Meng Meiyu who giggled and said, "Oh, so you're from the Royal Academy. We're from the City of Shadows, Devil Star Academy. Aren't you from the demonic cult?" Yun Piaomiao speechlessly interrupted that girl. What Devil Star Academy? It was simply the demonic cult, all right? Vice Cult Master Meng, your demonic cult also came to participate in the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition this time? Yun Piaomiao asked with a frown. Could it be that the other academies would all agree? Headmaster Yun's words are incorrect. These are indeed the children of the Devil Star Academy. Meng Meiyu's face was cold as she pointed to a group of similarly revealing girls. The gazes of these girls all fell on Prince Mo, Mu Xingchen, Duan Mu Qing, and the young masters of the Qin estate. Their beautiful eyes were full of tender feelings. They didn't hide the ambition and desire in their eyes at all. Seeing this, Yun Piaomiao was a little amused. When was the Devil Star Academy established? It must have been established for the sake of the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition. Fine, there was nothing much to say. Dean Yun led the group of people from his academy forward. The Saint Beautiful battle stage was right in front of them. In addition to the Devil Star Academy and the Royal Academy, there were also several other teams from different academies. Due to the large number of people, the gates of the Saint Auspicious Battle Arena were already wide open. However, the group of girls from the Devil Star Academy insisted on squeezing together with the students from the Royal Academy, and for a moment, it was extremely congested. She watched as that green-eyed lady pounced into eldest young Serchin's arms. The little stoic practically acted out of conditioned reflex and directly sent her flying with a bam. For a moment, the numerous students from the various academies who were entering stopped in their tracks at the same time. They looked at Sir Jojo strangely, as if they were looking at a female guardian deity with monstrous strength. Chapter 41:11. Sir Jojo's little face was also a bit stupefied. His eyes turned, and he expressionlessly looked at the crowd around him. Everyone's expressions were rather strange. Big brother Mu Xingchen even coughed to cover his laughter. Sir Jojo lowered his head and glanced at the leg he had just lifted, then turned to look at the green eyeliner woman who had flown out and crashed onto the ground, sprawling on her back. It was inexplicably strange. He didn't know when this Sir Jojo had this kind of conditioned reflex. Once a pitiful little asked him for help, his instinctive reaction was to kick the stoic face turned away and pretended she hadn't done anything. She held her husband's hand and walked into the arena. Cough, cough, cough. Yun Piaomiao was speechless as he coughed dryly. He hurriedly called out to the 3,000 students behind him. Okay, everyone line up and go in. Don't make a fuss. Everyone rolled their eyes at the dean. Who the hell was making a fuss? The person making a fuss already went in, and you didn't even say anything. You told these innocent people to stop making a fuss? Yun Piaomiao knew he was in the wrong. He rubbed his nose and chuckled dryly before changing the topic. That green eyeliner woman had fallen quite hard this time. However, everyone was a cultivator, so a fall wouldn't hurt her bones or tendons. When she got up from the ground in a flustered and exasperated manner, rushing to settle the score with Arbor's group had already gone to the arena. Meng Miu hastily grabbed her arm and said with a sullen face, "Don't go over." "Sister, what do you mean?" Meng Meiyu's expression became extremely unsightly. She had suffered such a big loss in front of so many people. How could she endure it? "Meiyu, I'm doing this for your own good." Meng Miu whispered in her ear and patted her arm. Let's go in first." Although Meng Meiyu's expression was still very unsightly, her eyes revealed traces of panic and uncertainty. "Sister, is what you said true? The woman who schemed against you in Phoenix Grove last time was that stoic face just now?" Meng Meiyu nodded solemnly. Meng Meiyu immediately couldn't help but want to curse. If that's the case, then we can't let her go? "Sister, let's find a way to get rid of her here. Don't act rashly." Meng Meiyu looked at her younger sister worriedly and shook her head. Before Sect Master left, he instructed us not to cause trouble everywhere. "Meiyu, you'd better rein in your spoiled and unbridled temper. We can't afford to offend everyone in this world." At least in Meng Meiyu's opinion, that little stoic was quite terrifying. "Sister, you're scared by that woman." Meng Meiyu sneered and couldn't help curling her lips. "Even if that woman is powerful, we can still ambush her when she's unprepared. Big sister, look at you. It's not that I want to lecture you, but when you saw that stoic face just now, your legs started to tremble." Hearing Meng Meiyu's ridicule, Meng Meiyu's face instantly darkened. "What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't that the case?" Meng Meiyu harumphed. "Sister, I'm also thinking of you other than that woman. Think about it, you've already been scared out of your mind by that stoic face. What good will it do for your future cultivation and growth? We can only let you rest easy in the future only by eliminating this mind demon of yours." Chapter 41:12. Xiao Qiao and her group had just walked into the arena when they were greeted by all kinds of noise and clamor. It was like a rolling heat wave that assaulted them. Xiao Mu really didn't like such a racket. "Imperial Academy teachers and students, you've come late." Li Xiangbei, the glowing president of Jiawei Academy, walked up to greet them with a smile. Thousands of students followed behind him, all dressed in black high-waisted exercise robes with a name tag engraved with Joe Academy's emblem hanging from their waists. Yun Piaomiao put on a fake smile and walked up to greet Joe Academy's president, Li Xiangbei, as well as several instructors. Li Xiangbei's gaze naturally landed on Prince Mo, the little stoic, eldest young Sir Qin, and the others standing in the front row of the group. As expected, Imperial Academy students are very valiant and heroic. The little stoic expressionlessly swept him a glance. That little taut expression on her face, it made the Joe Academy teachers and students who saw her feel an inexplicable pain in their balls. Is this little student also here to participate in the competition? A female instructor with an alluring figure from Joe Academy looked Arbor up and down and asked with a smile. The little stoic honestly had directly attached 3 layers of aura-concealing talismans to her body. Her current cultivation level looked like she was just a little student at the 3rd level of the spirit realm. Yun Piaomiao looked meaningfully at the little stoic and nodded. This is our new student. That alluring instructor couldn't resist covering her mouth and laughing. She's also going to fight? Yun Piaomiao nodded gravely, pretending to be an extremely worried teacher. That's right. She also passed the preliminaries, so according to convention, she can also sign up to participate in the finals. She signed up? That instructor cast an astonished look at Arbor. They naturally knew the rules of the Imperial Academy's Heavenly Origin competition preliminaries. Every team had a normal person and a pill master. Although the Imperial Academy seemed to have 3,000 students, in reality, there wouldn't be more than 2,000 contestants who would actually fight. This was because some low-level students were lucky enough to pass the preliminaries with their teams and obtain the qualifications for the finals. But in reality, how could those pill masters and normal people possibly fight on stage? They usually came to spectate. However, the members who were able to obtain a spot in the finals, regardless of whether they played or not, would all receive a reward. At the end of the competition, there would naturally be a unified settlement of the resource rewards, which were said to be quite rich. Jojo-san looked at the enchanting teacher with an expressionless face. Suddenly, he saw a person standing behind her. The person had green hair, and the color of his hair was eye-catching. That green-haired kid looked to be about 18 or 19 years old. His head was really green. Is it that green-haired guy? The little stoic suddenly pointed behind the bewitching female mentor. Eldest young Master Qin and the others couldn't help twitching their mouths. The little fatty jumped up and nodded. That's him. This bastard actually dares to participate in the competition? The little stoic expressionlessly waved her hand. Many of the royal school students rushed forward as if there was nothing left to live for. Without saying a word, they punched the green-haired kid and knocked him to the ground. The scene instantly became chaotic. At the same time, other than the people from Joe Academy and Devil Star Academy, there were also students from other academies. The people from the royal school suddenly attacked without any warning. Chapter 41:13. With so many royal school students attacking at the same time, the unlucky green-haired boy was pushed to the ground and beaten senseless with just a few punches. Everyone at the scene was stunned. Damn, the students from the royal school were indeed very fierce. How could they start fighting with the Great Way Academy students after just a few sentences? No, it should be a one-sided beating, all right? The other students from the Great Way Academy were not to be trifled with. They had only been stunned for a moment, but now that they had regained their senses, they naturally would not let the royal school off so easily. Seeing that the battle was about to break out, Principal Li and Principal Yun of the royal school stretched out their hands at the same time and drew out 2 god shields, blocking the students from both sides outside the shields. Stop! A deep and resounding voice rang out from the St. Joe battle arena. Everyone turned to look and saw a young man in a red robe striding towards them. Behind him, there were 2 rows of arena guards holding sharp knives and similarly wearing red cloaks. The group of people quickly spread out and pulled the green-haired boy up, separating the 2 sides of the quarreling people. So it's Captain Ao Lon. Principal Lee and Principal Yun turned their heads at the same time and looked at the young man in the red robe, nodding at him indifferently. The young man also very politely clasped his fists towards the two principals. Fighting is prohibited in the battle arena. What fighting? It's our classmate who's being beaten up. A female student from the Great Way Academy shrieked. Was this person blind? Who was fighting each other? From the beginning to the end, it was the Royal School students who attacked first. This group of mad dogs suddenly pounced on them and bit them. They did not even have time to retaliate before they were stopped by the two principals. Ao Lan looked at the female student, then turned to look in the direction of the Royal School students. No matter what personal grudges you have between you, a splashing sound suddenly swept across the sky, followed by a crack sound. A swift and fierce vine whip slid across the air in front of everyone's eyes. Before Ao Lan could react, it landed heavily on the green-haired boy's arm, eliciting a pitiful cry from the other party. The green-haired boy, who was originally being supported by someone, was now sent flying by a whip. Everyone watched as he fell miserably, his face heavily hitting the ground. They couldn't help but gasp. Damn, seeing him fall like that from so far away, I feel pain for him. Olin abruptly turned to look at Arbor. Dean Li Xiangbei of Jiuwei Academy, the enchanting female instructor, and the students all looked at Arbor as if they had seen a ghost. Why did you attack? A gift in return. Return gift. Ao Lan looked as if he had seen a ghost. He stared at the calm little girl in front of him. Return what gift? It's impolite not to reciprocate. Arbor looked at them coldly and calmly. Principal Lee of the Jiuwei Academy felt his eyelids twitch. Suddenly, he felt that the little stoic's gaze in front of him was sinister and ghostly, as if her entire body was emitting a chill. It inexplicably made a gust of wind start to leak from the bottom of his heart, making him feel very chilly. At this time, the green-haired boy had already been helped up. He pointed at the little fatty behind Arbor and gnashed his teeth in anger. "It's you guys." The little fatty straightened his rotund body and waved his arm at him. "When you broke my arm in the morning, you probably didn't expect that retribution would come so quickly." Chapter 41:14. The green-haired boy trembled in anger. He pointed at little fatty and shouted angrily, You. By now, Li Xiangbei could also tell that the Royal Academy didn't look for trouble with anyone but directly targeted this boy. They probably had some personal grudge. He then looked at Yun Piaomiao with knitted brows and said good-naturedly with a smile, "Headmaster, look at how troublesome this matter is. Since we're about to enter the competition, how about we put aside the other grudges for the time being? If there's anything that needs to be resolved, how about we settle it in this competition?" After saying that, his gaze swept to the little stoic. The little stoic merely wanted to teach the green-haired boy a lesson. Now that she had taught him a lesson, she naturally couldn't be bothered to find fault with him. The green-haired boy broke little fatty's hand, so she hit him back. Wasn't this very fair? The little girl felt that this matter was already settled, so she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Headmaster Li, who was looking at her. Yun Piaomiao twitched his mouth when he saw this. He had interacted with the little girl many times, so he could be considered to know a lot about the little girl's bizarre way of thinking. When he saw that the little girl wasn't speaking and the atmosphere was oppressive and awkward, he involuntarily coughed and stepped forward to smooth things over. Headmaster Li is right. If your school's teachers and students aren't convinced, you can naturally find our student Xiao to spar later. Since it's an unrestricted competition, cough cough. Headmaster Yun secretly dug a big hole for the little girl. Then it's not impossible for your school students to freely challenge the little girl. It's fine as long as it's done according to the competition rules. Before an unrestricted challenge, you need to submit an application 10 matches in advance, and the other party must also agree. Otherwise, you'd have to rely on drawing lots to determine your ranking. Drawing lots to qualify for the unrestricted competition, the unrestricted competition, and the guardian competition. The points for these three types of competitions were naturally different. Every student participating in the competition had a copy of the competition regulations and points system. When the time came, they just needed to follow these regulations and rules. After Yun Piaomiao finished speaking, he discovered that the surroundings were silent. Mo Lien, Mu Xingchen, eldest Qin, Omega Katok, fifth Qin Yasi, and the others all turned to look at Headmaster Yun. A certain headmaster who was originally speaking confidently and with assurance inexplicably felt his hair stand on end under these sirs' gazes. The stoic man was expressionless as he flipped through the bylaws in his hands. He discovered that the bylaws did indeed contain the rules of the free challenge competition. "Then I want to challenge you." The female student from Jiaowei Academy who had spoken earlier, filled with righteous indignation, roared at Arbor. He looked like he was about to eat someone. Xiao Mu immediately nodded without any hesitation. Damn it, she didn't even have half a second to think about it. "Accept." The little stoic called out crisply. The teachers and students of the royal school twitched their mouths. Mo Lien, Mu Xingchen almost choked on his own saliva. Looking at the female student from Jiaowei Academy, he couldn't help but mourn for her in his heart. Just how brainless was this elder sister to propose a free challenge to the little stoic? The little stoic stepped forward. The students of Jiaowei Academy immediately looked at her as if they were facing a great enemy. Although this girl's cultivation seemed to be very low, the fact that she had broken Green Hair's arm with a single whip was still lingering in their minds. They felt that this person in front of them didn't seem like a soft persimmon that could be casually kneaded. The little stoic walked up to the girl and patted her shoulder with a gratified expression. "You have good taste." Chapter 41:15. You simply have great foresight. You picked Sir Jojo as your opponent right off the bat. Miss, you're really not bad. You have foresight and fighting spirit. Your future is bound to be limitless. Not to mention Mo Lien, even those who were slightly more familiar with Sir Jojo all read this from the little girl's gratified expression. After eldest young Sir Qin sputtered with laughter, he hastily opened his fan and covered his face. Shengjia Battle Arena's captain glanced at the little girl speechlessly and couldn't help but remind her, "The competition hasn't started yet, so you can't privately make a challenge." Arbor abruptly turned to look at Captain Ao Lon and threw him a cold, displeased glance. Tap 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 tap. The little girl abandoned the crowd and walked away in a huff with her hands clasped behind her back. She was simply crazy. Why didn't you say earlier that you couldn't make a challenge before the competition? She was so happy for half a day just now that she thought she could start fighting as soon as the competition started. She really thought too much. Mu Xingchen stifled his laughter. Mo Lien turned to glance at him. Seeing his lowered head and trembling shoulders, she couldn't help but look up at the sky speechlessly. "Restrain yourself." Mu Xingchen nodded, but how could he calm down inside? No, he couldn't laugh at his little sister. But his little sister's appearance just now was seriously too comical and adorable. This battle-hungry little fellow's spirited, "I'm about to fight," expression suddenly turned into rage out of humiliation. Beneath her stoic face was an all-encompassing variety of strange little expressions. "Why didn't you say you couldn't make a challenge earlier? You made Sir Jojo waste his saliva." Following Ao Lan's lead, everyone arrived at the venue area and sat down in their respective academy areas. The 6 circular arenas were simultaneously illuminated by the suspended illuminating pearls and rotated clockwise along the stands at a uniform speed. Under the illuminating pearls' refraction, each arena emitted a bright and sharp light. A burst of noise came from the front. Everyone sat on the 4 sides of the stands, and the 6 arenas rotated clockwise. This way, everyone could clearly see the situation on each arena. Of course, if spirit energy crisscrossed during the battle, it was naturally impossible to clearly see the situation on each arena. At that time, they could only selectively watch 1 or 2 of the arenas. Therefore, the spectators spent a lot of spirit coins to buy seats in the front row of the arena. In this way, their field of vision was broadened, and they could clearly feel the intensity of each battle. The hosts of the competition were a pair of fairy-like white-clothed man and woman. In an instant, many peach blossom petals fell from the sky, drifting in the air. The man and woman held hands as they landed on one of the brightly lit arenas. They chuckled and said to the crowd in the stands, Greetings, patriarchs and sect masters of the aristocratic families. Greetings, young masters and young mistresses, teachers and students of the academy. Today, we are honored to be the host of the famous Heaven Yuan ranking competition in the 3 provinces. The bright illuminating pearl lit up the entire area of the Royal School. Let us welcome the teachers and students of the Royal School with a warm round of applause. From afar, Xiao Mu looked expressionlessly at the host and host who were talking non-stop. Her small face was tense. As we all know, the Tianyuan ranking was originally a competition for the Royal School to select the best talents. The 2 hosts blabbered on, but Arbor didn't listen carefully. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.